On procedural business, we need a declaration of substitutes. Are any members in attendance as substitutes today? Councillor Sheard.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Sheard subbing in for Councillor Loughran.
Thank you. And are there any declaration on the declaration of interest? Do any members wish to declare any interest in relation to any matters on the agenda? No. Thank you. On the matter of exclusion of the press and public, we need to consider whether, in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, the press and public should be excluded from the meeting when any of the following items are under consideration. We do not have any Part 2 items today, so the press and public will not need to be excluded. Does the committee approve the minutes for the 2nd of April 2025 attached to the agenda? Unanimous, thank you. Now, I have a little interjection here, if I may, because under the Chair's communications, I would like to, before we get on with our committee business, mention that we were soon to say a very sad goodbye to our colleague Jane Mosley, who has worked in the development management team as planning manager for the past 5 years. Jane started with us in late June. I'm told that you came to us from West Sussex County Council. But it wasn't your first time at Brighton and Hove County Council. You previously worked in the Development Management Services and Applications Officer, is that right? Around 2002, 2003. Having signed up for more punishment in 2020, Jane obviously joined during the pandemic when most of the team was still working from home. So she had to get to know the service and the team and obviously pick up on how we work or doing it all remotely, which cannot have been easy. But she managed it, and as with all her hard work, with aplomb. Jane has been an integral part of continuing the improvements of the Development Management Service and is particularly knowledgeable around case law. Sadly, she is now moving to London. I'm told to live in leafy Richmond and to work in, dare I say, less leafy Hounslow. On a personal note, Jane, I'd just like to say thank you for your patience, your knowledge and your enthusiasm. Since I joined the committee 18 months ago, you've been ever helpful with no question too silly to respond to. And I've had plenty. I've learned an awful lot, and I can say without hesitation that our loss is Hounslow's gain. So could I ask everyone to join me in wishing you every success in the future and good luck with Heathrow Airport expansion. Thank you. So do the committee members have any requests? Oh, sorry, I think we've done the site visits. The Democrats, I beg your pardon? Oh, do you have any more requests for site visits in relation to any of the applications we're considering today? No? Thank you. And the Democratic Services Officer will now read out the applications on the agenda and ask committee members if they want to discuss the items as they're called.
Thank you, Chair. So just starting with the first applications. Major applications are automatically called, which is item A, Royal Sussex County Hospital, and item B, 126 Gloucester Road. So they are major items and are automatically called. Minor items with speakers are called. So the first item on the minors is item C, which has speakers, which is 47 Eastbrook Road, Portslade. Item D, BH 2024/03121, Flat 2, Princess Mansions, 31 Sussex Square, Brighton. Do members wish to discuss this application? Thank you. And item E is associated with that as listed building consent. Moving on to item F, which is 9 Princess Square, Hove, that has speakers, so is called. Moving on to item G, BH 2024/02767, 1 and 1A Pembroke Crescent, Hove. Do members wish to discuss this application? Thank you. Moving on to item H, BH 2024/02554, 9A Harrington Road, Brighton. Do members wish to discuss this application? Thank you. Moving on to item I, BH /002222 Imperial House, 40 to 42 Queens Road, Brighton. Do members wish to discuss this application? Thank you. Moving on to item J, BH 2024/03089 3 Merston Close, Brighton. Do members wish to discuss this application? Thank you. And finally, item K, BH 2025/00268 6B College Place, Brighton. Do members wish to discuss this application? Thank you. So to clarify, Chair, the major items A and B are called automatically. Item C is called automatically. D has been called as an associated. E has been called for that. Item F has speakers. Item G, H, I, and J have not been called for discussion, but item K has been called for discussion. So the running order will be A, B, C, D, E, F, and then K, I believe. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. So shall we go straight to the major then, item A?
Oh, no.
Sorry, the items that have not been called will be decided in accordance with the recommendation. Thank you. Item A.
Thank you. So the application is for the Royal Sussex County Hospital on Easton Road. It's quite a long application description because it's a Section 73 application, which basically seeks to vary a number of conditions. Just before I go into detail on that description, just to quickly set the context, the original application that's refers to was approved in 2012. That was the 3Ts development, which is a kind of redevelopment expansion of the Royal Sussex County Hospital. The 3Ts, trauma, tertiary and training, I believe. Then in 2022, 2021, a subsequent Section 73 application was submitted, which amended a number of details in relation to the Stage 1 building, although mainly sort of related to materials and appearance, but also some amendments to the helicopter landing pad on the Thomas Kemp Tower and a few other items. And now we have another Section 73 application in, which is this one currently before you, which seeks to vary the 2022 consent. So just quickly, the majority of the conditions here that are being amended are fairly minor changes. So in terms of condition 3, plant noise levels, condition 40, acoustic survey, and 56, another acoustic survey in relation to the Stage 3 development. They're merely really be updated to reflect the most current British standard in relation to noise testing and assessment. So fairly minor. All the changes in relation to drainage, that's condition 26, 42, 43, and 44, basically reflect the fact that detailed drainage strategies have now been undertaken for Stage 2, which is the cancer centre. So those conditions have just been updated accordingly. And then in respect of conditions 41, which relates to rainwater recycling scheme, and 47, the level 6 roof terrace, they're being removed because the proposed amendments to the Stage 2 cancer centre, which I'll go on to, basically remove that roof terrace as part of the amended design. So as far as I see it, really, the two sort of key conditions to sort of focus on in terms of this application is the variation of condition 1, which relates to the approved drawings, because that proposes some fairly fundamental changes to the Stage 2 cancer centre, and the removal of condition 8 in relation to car parking numbers, because that seeks to remove the 2 layers of basement car parking originally proposed under the Stage 2 cancer centre. Just to say, this application also includes an environmental impact assessment. So the 2012 application included basically was accompanied with an environmental impact assessment, and so each Section 73 application has kind of reviewed the environmental impact assessment to see where it needs to be updated, and so on. So just to sort of reflect on the main changes proposed as part of this current application. So there's an increase in the height of the main Stage 2 cancer centre building by up to 6.5 metres. The building will still remain at 5 storeys though. There's an overall reduction in the amount of floor space of the proposed Stage 2 building from 19,536 square metres to 12,808 square metres. That doesn't include the removal of the basement parking. Alterations to the overall design of the Stage 2 building, so its general appearance. As I just stated, the removal of 2 floors of basement parking proposed beneath the Stage 2 building. So this results in a reduction in number of parking spaces on site from 390, sorry, not on site overall, but as part of the 3T's development on site, from 390 spaces to 98 parking spaces. There's a provision of a new landscape public plaza between the Louisa Martindale building and the amended Stage 2 Cancer Centre building. There's some amendments to the lay-by at the front of the Cancer Centre for patient transport services, taxis and private vehicles, although the sort of details of that will be secured by planning condition. And there's also, as part of the Stage 3 service yard, which I'll look at in a bit, there's the addition of 2 10-metre high vacuum insulated evaporator tanks, basically oxygen storage as I understand it. So those are the key changes. So just going to the location plan, possibly not the clearest, but the red line basically outlines the application site, and then the blue line shows other land within the NHS Trust ownership, but I'll just go to a slightly more helpful plan. So this is an aerial photo of the site. You can see here, it's slightly old because it still has the Barry building in situ, but you've got Eastern Road running east to west. If you can see my cursor, you can see the outline here of the Louisa Martindale building, which was Stage 1 of the 3T's development, which has been completed and occupied for at least a couple of years, with the basement parking beneath it. And then just here you can see the Children's Hospital, and here's the Thomas Kemp Tower. Just a 3D aerial photo of the site. Doesn't show much more than what I just showed, other than, again, you can see the completed Stage 1 building here. So just a street photo to give you a bit of context. This is taken from Eastern Road. So this was clearly prior to the demolition of the Barry building, and also prior to the demolition of this temporary building here, which has now been removed. And you can see the Louisa Martindale building just in the background here. And then just a quick photo to reflect as it is now. So, or not quite, because this temporary building still shown, but that's gone, but no more Barry building. And you can see the Children's Hospital just in the background there. So this is the proposed block plan showing the proposed Stage 2 building as proposed to be amended. I think if I just go straight to this landscape phasing plan, as it's slightly clearer. So you can see this is the Stage 2 building here, if you can see my cursor. What was a sort of more rectangular shaped building has basically become a square. The footprint's been reduced, and as a result of that, it's sort of enabled the creation of this public plaza between the Stage 1 and the Stage 2 buildings. Then you've got the single-storey element of the Stage 2 building on the far western side, which contains the radiotherapy bunkers, which we can talk about in a bit more detail, and then has a landscaped roof. And you can just see the lay-by here. So I'm just showing you the sort of previously approved block plan, just by sort of way of comparison. So you've got just a larger footprint all round, really. Again, centred around a sort of central courtyard, as is the new scheme, but just a larger footprint, and obviously included 2 layers of basement parking beneath it. So just going to the stage 2 proposed front elevation. I do have a slightly clearer front elevation than this, but the reason why I'm just showing you this one is that it does helpfully show the outline. Firstly, you can see there's a red outline here, which shows the Barry building as it was. Then you have a blue outline, which basically shows the stage 2, the previously approved stage 2 cancer centre building. And then obviously you've got the new stage 2 cancer centre sitting behind it. So you can just see the kind of increase in heights as the scheme's kind of progressed. I mean, what I would say, just to be sort of clear, is this 63.5 metres, where this arrow is here, is the main sort of roof. That's the level of the main roof of the previously approved building. And then sort of some of this additional height here is plant, safety railings and so on. So at least that hopefully gives a comparison of the increase in height in relation to the new building. I think the other point I made, that's probably not the clearest drawing here, but it's just there's the Clarence King House, sorry, not Clarence, Courtney King House, apologies, on the other side of Upper Abbey Road to the west of the site, which is almost an identical height to the now proposed stage 2 cancer centre building. So that kind of gives you an idea of the scale of the new building, because it's almost directly comparable. So slightly clearer sort of elevation here. This is from Easton Road, looking north of the building, so effectively the front elevation. So you can see it's a slightly simplified form in relation to the previous consent, partly as a result of the fact that the floor space has been reduced. In terms of materials, it uses reconstituted stone panels and aluminium, so the design does reflect at least elements of the Louise and Martindale building. So it effectively seeks to have some coherence in relation to the previous development on the site. And you can see here, this is part of the new. So there's basically a new flint wall that's proposed along the western side of the site that meets Upper Abbey Road, which I can show you on the side elevation. But where this wall here meets that new flint wall that's being provided, they've kind of gone for a sort of flint appearance to the panels on the front elevation. I could discuss that a little bit more in elevations, but the reason why there's no windows on that elevation is because sitting directly behind it are the radiotherapy bunkers. And again, you can just see the public plaza here, which we consider helps to sort of break up the mass of the development to some extent. So I'm just showing the previously approved scheme. So you can see in terms of footprint, it was quite a bit larger. Had sort of front elevation was divided into 3 main parts, with your kind of a central atrium, rotunda, and then you've got your kind of elevations flanking on either side. So it's quite a different building in terms of its general appearance. So just in terms of the west side elevation, I think this is the view that you'd see from walking up Upper Abbey Road. As you can see, there's the replacement flint wall along Upper Abbey Road. The sort of design of which needs to be secured by condition, because it's to be a sort of modern interpretation of the previous flint wall. We're looking for something with a little bit more detail and interest on it, so it's a less imposing wall. Just in terms of this elevation, I think it does quite helpfully convey. So although this building has been increased fairly significantly in height, as I say, by 6.5 metres in total, it does provide at least the context of the Louise and Martindale building from the background here, the Thomas Kemp Tower and the Children's Hospital, or which is significantly larger. So it sits amongst a collection of fairly tall buildings. And probably also worth pointing out that in the urban design framework for the council, Easton Road is designated as a corridor for tall buildings. Here's again, just for comparison, here's the side elevation of the previously approved stage 2 scheme. And you can see that original roof terrace. And then just a rear elevation of the currently proposed stage 2 cancer centre building, as sort of looking at it from the South Service Road. Effectively, that's the north elevation. And then just a final elevation, which is as you would see it from the new public plaza, effectively. So you've got the Children's Hospital just here, and some of the hospital buildings, outpatients building, and so on the other side of the road, south side of Easton Road. Also, just worth pointing out that the main access into the new Stage 2 Cancer Centre building is from this elevation. So effectively, you go into the public plaza and access the building through this elevation here. Just a couple of visuals, just to help give you a sort of impression. So this is the wall that I was talking about. So in order to try and create a bit more interest, as I say, because windows aren't ideal for radiotherapy bunkers, there's some text there showing it's Sussex Cancer Centre and some landscaping to just try and add some visual interest and kind of reduce the sort of overall mass of that wall. And then obviously there's the landscaped area that sits on top of that. Obviously, this, just to clarify, this is the view from Easton Road, so you're looking northeast here. Upper Abbey Road up here, and then a series of residential properties along Upper Abbey Road, in addition to Courtney King House. So this is proposed visual looking north. Let me just scan out slightly. Looking northwest from Easton Road. So again, you can see the new public plaza area here, Children's Hospital in the background, and the new access would be around about here. Just a quick thing to say, these trees shown in the visuals are unlikely to actually be their reality. This hasn't been amended, but the lay-by design is likely to change, or highly likely to change, for sort of safety reasons, and that landscape strip will likely be removed as a result of that. As I say, that would be the detailed design would be secured by condition, but just point out that those trees are unlikely to remain there just along this frontage here. Obviously not talking about the public plaza. And then here's one more visual looking down at Upper Abbey Road. So Upper Abbey Road being sort of some of the closest residential properties to the new proposed development. And this is taken from this landscape and visual impact assessment. Just a quick visual of the previously approved building, again, just by means of comparison to see it all together. Wider structure, obviously marginally lower. And that's just an aerial view of the previously approved scheme. Again, just to give you an idea of the scale. Just going on to so that was all focused on the amendments to the Stage 2 Cancer Centre. Probably actually one thing I'd just point out is, in terms of the increase in the height of the building, the main justification for that, provided by the NHS Trust, is basically to meet modern sort of ventilation requirements, fire regulations, and to sort of maximise energy efficiency, because they're trying to meet BREEAM Excellent for that Stage 2 building. So that's basically increased the sort of between floor height, which has resulted in overall growth in the height of the building. As I say, it's not actually it's not like it has an additional floor to it. So just coming around to Bristol Gate here, which is where the stage 3 site is. So you can see here, actually, this is the existing cancer centre. So once the new one is provided, this would then be demolished. Just another view of the stage. Just another view of the existing cancer centre here. And you can also see the basement parking coming off Bristol Gate under the stage 1 building. And basically where this existing cancer centre is now will be where the new sort of oxygen tanks I was talking about would be located. In all other respects, this stage 3 development remains the same. I'll show you it here. So once the existing cancer centre is demolished, it basically proposes a storage building here, I think for waste and general storage, and the service yard. And so the only fundamental difference between the previously approved scheme and this one is really just in relation to the stage 3 side of things, is the provision of these 2 oxygen tanks that I was talking about, which you can see in this drawing. And then just in terms of elevation, just scroll in so you can see it slightly more clearly. So this is the oxygen tank here. They obviously sit one behind the other one. So that's the location. So they will be visible from Bristol Gate, but are sort of fairly set back and screened partially, if not entirely, by proposed landscaping. So just scroll that side. So in terms of representations received for this application, we've received objections received from 34 individuals raising the following concerns: that the design of the updated scheme has little in common with the original in terms of scale and design, undermining initial vision, and no account has been taken of resident feedback, and there's a detrimental impact on the surrounding environment, listed building and conservation areas. Other concerns: the proposed building extends much further north than the Barry building, although it doesn't extend further north than the previously consented stage 2 scheme. There's a reduction in parking, which will lead to increased competition for street parking and higher congestion in the surrounding area. In combination with proposed Brighton College traffic impacts will worsen. Travel plan and parking plan isn't rigorous enough. Loss of outlook and light as a result of the increased height of the building. Public realm should be reduced or removed to move the building away from Upper Abbey Road. The new public realm will become a wind tunnel, will receive very little light. Stage 2 building will create a wind tunnel between the new building and Courtney King House. Increased disruption, noise and light pollution. Ongoing problems with ventilation, noise, smokers, litter, etc. Upper Abbey Road will be in the highest dust zone, and there appears to be no plan to deal with this. The step roof line westwards and northwards would address the increased height of the proposal, and noise and sunlight surveys have not been carried out correctly and assume a best case scenario. I think just to quickly address that point, what I just would say is, well, I'll address a number of the points, but I just wanted to point out that the sunlight daylight report that was produced and the wind assessment have been independently assessed. So the council basically commissioned, in the case of sunlight, the BRE to review it, to check that it was robust. And we also commissioned another consultant to look at the wind assessment. And so both, there were a few amendments here and there. The amended documents have gone back on the public file, but effectively they concluded with the amendments that were made that the studies were robust and were done in accordance with the BRE guidance on sunlight and daylight, which is the sort of main industry standard. Just in terms of further representations, we've received 3 letters of support to say the whole community will benefit from an improved cancer treatment facility, which will save countless lives. The building complements its surroundings and matches the Louisa Martindale building. And 3 representations, neither objecting or supporting, have been received as well, but don't raise any additional issues to those already raised. So in terms of determining this application, the key considerations, the principle of development, the design, scale, layout, appearance and heritage, impact on amenity, sustainable transport, landscape and ecology, sustainability, air quality and noise pollution, sustainable drainage and water quality, and wind microclimate. So in respect to the principle of development, obviously we consider that's been well established through the previous planning consents on the site, policies in the city plan that support the redevelopment of the hospital, and obviously the obvious health benefits that come with the provision of the new cancer centre. Having regard to the design heritage, while we sort of recognise it is a more simplified and functional in appearance than the previously consented scheme, still consider that the design of materials would be consistent with the adjacent Louisa Martindale building. The increase in the height of the Stage 2 building, I think, whilst noticeable, is not considered to have such a significant impact on the street scene or heritage assets, as it would still be significantly lower than adjacent hospital buildings, such as Louisa Martindale building, the Royal Alexandra Children's Hospital. I think it's clearly acknowledged there will be some impact on outlook and light. This is picked up in the report, but there is some acknowledged loss of light to two windows in Courtney King House. That's at the sort of ground floor and first floor of two of those properties. Although on balance, we take the view that while regrettable that there is an impact, the overall benefits of providing a cancer centre and the relatively limited harm in terms of sunlight and daylight mean that we don't consider it a reason for refusal of planning permission. And then again, in terms of outlook, again, I think it's undisputed that there would be an impact on the outlook from properties in Courtney King House and indeed on the closest properties on Upper Abbey Road. But I think fundamentally there would have been an impact from the previously consented scheme, and while it is higher, again, we don't consider that the overall impact is so harmful as to warrant a refusal of planning permission, again, particularly weighing into taking into account the planning balance and the health benefits of the proposed scheme. The proposed removal of the basement level parking beneath the Stage 2 Cancer Centre building is considered to be acceptable due to the significant amount of staff parking and associated park and ride facilities at Brighton Racecourse and Whitehawk Football Club. This has basically freed up a significant amount of space within the multi-storey car park, and obviously with the addition of the new basement parking at the Stage 1 Louisa Martindale building. So what you effectively have now is a situation where the vast majority of the staff parking, as I say, takes place at the Racecourse and Whitehawk Football Club. And that's freed up the vast majority of the existing multi-storey car park for patient and visitor parking. And again, the Stage 1 basement car park. So the vast majority of the parking at the hospital now is for patient and visitor parking. And there are some exceptions. There are in total, about 107 spaces for staff, sort of essential users. But that's of a total of 476 spaces across the site. I think I'll go on. I'll go on at the end of the presentation. I'll just mention it. We've received an updated highway consultation response in relation to the scheme, because previously they're objecting. So I'll just cover that off as well. And we're also suggesting an amendment to the Section 106 in terms of securing off-site provision, but I'll cover that in detail in terms of the wording shortly. The amended proposals are considered to be acceptable having regards to landscape and ecology, sustainability, sustainable drainage, air quality, noise, and wind microclimate. Will not have any notably increased impacts in respect to these issues than the existing consented scheme. It is therefore recommended that the proposed development complies with the national and local planning policy. It's considered the proposed development complies with national and local planning policies, and planning permission is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions within the report and a deed of variation to the original Section 106 agreement. sorry, as I was just discussing and following the highways comments, we consider that this wasn't in the committee report, but we consider that an additional head of term for the Section 106, or at least the deed of variation to the Section 106, would be a minimum of 292 staff car parking spaces within walking distance of the site, or with the provision of shuttle bus park and ride to be provided. So that would be off-site prior to the occupation of the Stage 2 Cancer Centre and provided in perpetuity. That's effectively what's happening now in terms of the race course and Whitehawk FC, but in terms of ongoing lease sort of arrangements, we're seeking to ensure that no matter what happens, a certain amount, as I say, 292 staff car parking spaces will be retained off-site in one form or another in order to effectively prevent staff returning back to the main site. So that's the current proposal. And then if I can just quickly read out the conclusions of the local highway authority response, because as you'll be aware, they were previously objecting, although their main objection was in relation to the lay-by at the front of the Stage 2 Cancer Centre building. But to summarise their comments, the local highway authority finds the present application acceptable, subject to a condition to restrict staff use of current on-site parking to the 107 staff parking spaces. That's on-site. A disabled parking condition to provide 4 additional disabled parking bays. A cycle parking scheme, a condition to ensure the overall site provision of 399 spaces, and a car park management plan to include all on-site provision. And then in addition to that, they propose a Section 106 deed of variation to provide an obligation to provide as a minimum 292 off-site parking spaces with associated park and ride facilities for staff in perpetuity, as I've just said, and that's what our additional head of term references, as well as travel plan obligations and to secure some monitoring fees for the local highway authority. So I've just received that today. But so one thing I haven't pointed out is if you're wondering where the figure of 292 staff car parking spaces off-site has come from, that basically reflects the amount of parking that's been lost on site as a result of the removal of the 2 layers of basement parking. So that concludes the presentation. Questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions for clarification from members? Thank you. Start this side. Councillor Galvin, Councillor Earthy, Councillor Robinson, Councillor Theobald, and Councillor Shanks.
Am I on, Chair?
You are.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification. You mentioned that the removal of the basement parking, that instead of 300 odd parking spaces, there would be 98 parking spaces. Could you clarify where those 98 parking spaces would be, please?
Yeah, so the 390 referred to the 2 layers of basement parking below the Stage 2 Cancer Centre building and the basement level beneath the Stage 1 Louisa Martindale building. The Stage 1 Louisa Martindale building basement parking is already there in existence, and that's the part that provides the 98 spaces. So those 98 spaces are within the basement of the Louisa Martindale building. They're currently in existence and being used.
Those 98 spaces are referred to as staff parking. Where do patients and visitors park in that instance, please?
So the 98 spaces are for patients and visitors, not staff. The majority of staff park off-site, and I believe it's a total of 530 spaces between the racecourse and Whitehawk Football Club. And then there's 107 parking spaces on site, which is divided up between a number of different areas, with about 38 in the multi-storey car park, some at St Mary's Hall, some at Sussex House. So they're sort of dotted across the site.
Councillor West?
Yeah. A few questions. I'm getting very confused about the parking arrangements. A couple of preliminary questions. This is a regional cancer centre, yeah? So it's not just for Brighton, it's for what, South East or Sussex? What I'm trying to get at is we are expecting a load of visitors in from outside the city.
So, yes, that's my understanding. It's a regional cancer centre.
So the second question is, obviously this new cancer centre is a lot smaller than the old one. Does that mean there's going to be less patients in there, or does each patient have less area to be treated in?
Well, that's probably best directed at the applicant. But what I would say is that the number of staff associated with the building hasn't changed significantly. So I think it's a more efficient. It's a more efficient layout, but I don't think it's intended to service a lot less people. And in fact, the number of beds that are in that within the new Stage 2 building is actually increased beyond the Stage 2, the previously approved Stage 2 building.
Okay, so the reason what I'm trying to get to is, under this new design and new parking arrangements, are the patients and their visitors in there going to be no worse off than they would have been under the old design? What I'm trying to get to is, when you've got cancer, the last thing you want to do is to drive round and round Brighton trying to find a parking space. You just want to go to the cancer centre, park, get treated, leave. But the way this has been presented is it almost seems that you made the building a bit smaller, but you made the parking a lot smaller. You're talking about competition for space around the area. And I can just see a lot of very, very nervous patients turning up, driving round and round and round. I don't think it's right. So if you can put my mind at rest, thank you.
So what I would say is the overall level of parking provision has increased significantly, but it relies on the racecourse and the Whitehawk Football Club, which, as I say, provide 530 staff spaces. So that entirely frees up the multi-storey car park, which has 302 spaces within it, and the basement car parking under the Stage 1 building for patient and visitor parking. So previously, before this development, the multi-storey car park was, I think, primarily used by staff. There was some patient parking there, but there was a half or more than that was used by staff. So I think what it's done is it's consolidated all the staff parking, or the vast majority of staff parking, off-site, which has freed up quite a lot of capacity for patient and visitor parking on-site.
Thank you. I think it would be really useful possibly to have the applicants maybe to give us a bit more information a bit further down the line. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I have some other questions about parking and about capacity in the car parks and how patients are directed to that capacity, but I think that's probably more for the applicant. Okay, so for you then, Ben, it's more about the difference between this application and the previous application in terms of the effect on the neighbours in Upper Abbey Road. And I'm looking at the pictures and I'm thinking about in both applications, was there that lower level kind of where the radioactive stuff is all stored? There in both applications, were they both just single story with trees and stuff on top? So is that the same now as it was before?
It's not identical.
Sorry, yeah.
It's not identical. There were some radiotherapy bunkers around the side, and there was a degree of landscaping on top of those, but they were partly on the side and they partly wrapped around the back. But there was a kind of single story element on the western side of the previously approved building as well.
Again, I'm thinking about the neighbours. So is there more that's single story? I'm trying to think about the height then. So yes, we get that it's 6 metres higher, but is the area directly on Upper Abbey Road the same size, bigger, smaller? Have they got a bit of relief at that level, even though they've got height further up?
I think I believe it's marginally higher, the single story element where the bunkers are kept.
Can I ask a question on that front? Because I was interested to know, because again, you know, obviously one of the objections has been the fact that we've got this 6.5 metres. Am I right in thinking that now it's actually further away from the boundary than the previous design?
Yeah, so it's the kind of 5-story element is actually pulled in about 3 metres from Upper Abbey Road. So it has increased in height, but it has pulled in slightly away from Upper Abbey Road.
Councillor Theobald. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to pick up about the car parking now. What's the main reason for removing the underground car parking? I presume it's costs. To talk a bit about the multi-storey car park, when I've had to visit there a number of times recently, you can't get in, it's absolutely full, and the spaces are so small as well. You know, it's just a nightmare, really, parking around there. Going to another subject, the roof garden was removed. Why was that, I wonder? It's reduced the public area, which is a shame. The other thing, the public art, I was quite astounded to see, is 421,000. What are they going to do with that? And I hope they'll reduce that blue plaque, which it is on number 13 now, because this plaque was originally, there was one at the Barry building. And that, you know, it's worth having that plaque back there. That would be about £1,600, and that's only a small amount really compared to that. Could you make your questions and for clarification, Councillor Theobald? This is specifically about clarifying what. Yes, that's right. I want to know why they've first of all about why they've deleted the underground car parking. That's a question. And then the roof, why they got rid of the garden, the roof garden, and there's not much public area. And what are they going to do with the public art money? The 421,000. Thank you.
So I suppose just in terms of the parking, I mean that may be best for the NHS Trust to address. But I mean, there is obviously a significant cost for providing basement parking. But I think the other thing is because they have a parking solution which currently works for them, which is the provision of the racecourse and Whitehall Football Club. And I just say, I mean, it does provide some benefits, at least in planning terms, in the sense that if you have all that staff parking off site, then it has less results in less traffic along Easton Road, which is an air quality management area. So I think they see they've currently got a situation which works well for them. And if it does, as it appears to, then the idea of providing 2 layers of basement parking seems probably not something that's necessary to do given the costs. But again, it's probably best that the trust address that point. But in terms of the public area, well, agreed. The roof garden has gone, but it's been replaced by a ground floor public plaza between the stage 2 and the stage 1 building, which is considerably more accessible, I think, for everybody. And I think one of the reasons why they don't have a roof garden on top of the new stage 2 building is because there's quite a lot of PV, photovoltaic panels up there to help them meet their BREEAM excellent standard. And then just finally, in terms of the public art contribution, I'm aware quite a bit of that's already been spent in the Louisa Martindale building. I have discussed the blue plaque with the NHS Trust. I only got a response yesterday, which is why I haven't come back to you yet. But they are intending to put that plaque on the stage 2 building, but obviously it's it's not complete yet. That seems the appropriate place for it because it replaces the Barry building.
Thank you, Councillor Shanks.
I think mine is really just a quick thing, and it probably is the applicant just to explain why, because I think that's not really clear. I mean, I think it sounds fine. So, I mean, we don't necessarily need to know why people are doing things, but it does help to understand a bit the rationale, I think. So,
Could I just ask one clarification? Because I know that parking is a big issue and I know that people are concerned about it. You've mentioned that there were 530 parking spaces off site, but just as you were wrapping up, you said something about 107 on site, but then in response to somebody else, I thought it came up to 300. Could you just clarify how many on-site parking spaces there are? Thank you.
So in terms of on-site parking spaces, as a total, with the multi-storey car park, the existing basement car park, and some of the other buildings,
yes.
it's 476 spaces. The 107 relates to the amount of staff spaces on site.
Thank you. Okay. No more questions then for the planning officer. I'd like to ask Ward Councillor Tristram Burton if he would like to come and. Oh, sorry. Oh, the resident. Beg your pardon. Okay, is Julian Redpath with us? Thank you, Mr. Redpath. Welcome to the committee. There's a button on the right-hand side at the bottom, and for you to speak, you've got 3 minutes, and then the clock will start as soon as you start speaking. So do start when you're ready.
Residents of Upper Abbey Road and Courtney King House call on councillors to insist on amendments to the Sussex Cancer Centre plans. The SCC is the latest in a series of new hospital buildings, which form a large wall to the east of our homes, and will inflict further overshadowing noise and nighttime light pollution and compound cumulative loss of daylight, sunlight, views and privacy. Despite challenges of living alongside a large hospital and numerous demolition and construction projects over the past 30 years, we support the building of the SEC, but request 2 amendments. 1, shifting the precise location of the building, and 2, requiring a serious coherent travel plan. The new design is unrecognisable from the original scheme. Internal floor space reduced by 1/3, 285 spaces of underground parking removed, roof garden for patients, staff and visitors removed, supposedly replaced by a hard-surfaced public plaza. Yet the new building extends further back and is much taller than the Barry building and considerably taller, 6.5 metres, than the previous scheme. The inclusion of a 30-metre public space in a wholly unsuitable location, overshadowed by 2 tall buildings, on a busy road, facing a lay-by. There are various more agreeable outdoor spaces nearby, plus ample indoor seating and catering facilities in the LMB and planned new building. Removal or serious shrinking of this space would shift the new building up to 30 metres further away from our homes, a major mitigation of this negative impact with no effect on space within the building or on the timescale of construction. This would allow for an enlarged private garden for patients, visitors and staff west of the SCC. Current proposals allow a mere 17 metres for such a garden, mostly unusable space on top of bunkers. Many hospitals and charities, such as Martlet's, are incorporating such biodiverse wellbeing areas into their campuses. Our hospital should do likewise, rather than provide an unwanted, poorly placed public area composed of hard slabs and a few planters, mainly appealing to smokers and vapors, as witnessed outside the LMB and all around the hospital perimeter. Public areas the Trust is incapable of keeping clean. Failure to incorporate such a wellbeing space dedicated to users of the SCC, with its dramatic enhancement of biodiversity, would be a lamentable missed opportunity by the Trust and councillors. I'll skip the parking stuff because you've spoken about that a lot. Residents diligently engaged with all avenues of consultation. The only change architects and Trust made is moving the rooftop garage for plant a few metres east. Planning officers disparage the new building as boxy, utilitarian, and of lesser quality than the previous design, and identify material nuisance and loss of amenity to residents as grounds for refusing a planning. welfare and well-being of current and future residents and users of the SCC by insisting on 1, a move further from their homes, and 2, a coherent travel plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Redpath. Can we go to Councillor Burden? Online.
Hopefully you can all hear me and see me. Thank you,
We
Chair.
can't see you, but we can hear you.
You can't see me?
You can see him. Okay.
Good. Okay. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak to the committee. Speaking as both a ward councillor for Queen's Park and the former chair of the Hospital Liaison Group. And I chaired the Hospital Liaison Group from May 2023 until just this past February. There, the hospital gave the community updates about the development, and residents were able to question the plans and make representations about issues. During the meetings over the course of a few months, there were raised significant concerns with how this development will impact the local community. As we've heard, the designs have greatly altered from the originals submitted in 2012 and again in 2022, but have not been changed sufficiently to address residents' concerns in their latest iteration. Residents in Queen's Park, and indeed all the neighbouring wards, welcome the cancer centre in principle. There's no doubt that Sussex desperately needs a cancer centre like the one proposed somewhere. My wife had breast cancer recently, and the need to travel to different parts of Sussex for appointments presented significant challenges. But the current designs need further alteration to protect the quality of life of the surrounding neighbourhood. And I'm asking that the Planning Committee carefully consider at least the following vital points before making a decision. As we've heard, on-site parking spaces are being reduced to almost 300, from almost 300 to 98, that are already actually available. Key workers already find parking in the area extremely challenging, and this will not only exacerbate these issues for key workers, but put great strain on local traffic in an area that already experiences a lot of congestion. The increase in traffic on Upper Abbey Road and Whitehawk Road are of special significant concern. And the height of the building is a massive change from the Barry building that once stood there, and will create a much more imposing building for residents of Upper Abbey Road and of Courtney King House. It's higher by a whopping 8.8 metres, increasing from an original 18.6 metres to 27.4, and over 6 metres higher than the original plans, as we've heard. The building in its current designs will also sit much closer to homes and families. There is sufficient space for the cancer centre to sit closer to the new Louisa Martindale building, as Mr. Redpath has already related. And it's been suggested by residents that this was included in the plans, but ignored in the final proposals. The increase of height and proximity to homes will create a new loss of privacy and daylight, and the increase in traffic and congestion will doubtless have an impact on the air quality, besides introducing a new spectrum of unwanted noise from machinery and fan extractors. So I hope the committee considers carefully the current plans and the opportunities for their improvement, especially moving the building much closer to Louisa Martindale and away from homes, families and residents. There are 17.3 metres used by the public plaza available to make these adjustments, and I think it could be put next to Abbey Road. Thank you very much for listening to my concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Burden. We can now go to the applicants. Good afternoon. Do I have Roy Evans in front of me? Good afternoon, Mr. Evans. So you are the Director of Capital Development and Property, University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust, and you have 3 minutes, and there's a button on the right-hand side at the bottom of your microphone, and when you start speaking, it'll just start, the timer will start. Thank you.
Thank you for the committee for giving us this opportunity to speak to you today. At the Trust, our mission is to deliver high quality patient care and improve health outcomes for our communities. Whilst developing our new strategy, we ran our big conversation engaging with patient staff and members of the public. Improving the environments and facilities in our hospitals was one of their top priorities. Redeveloping the Cancer Centre at Brighton is a key priority for the Trust to modernise and improve health outcomes for our community. The government recently announced a review of the new hospitals programme, confirming that the centre is within the first round of funding to deliver delivering projects by 2030. The majority of other schemes across the country are being asked to delay delivery due to constrained national budgets. Securing this funding is a huge opportunity for Brighton and Sussex, which will dramatically enhance cancer care in the South East. As we speak, we're preparing our full business case submission for submission to the government at the end of the month. Securing this consent is requisite to the submission and will ensure this opportunity for Brighton is not missed. Since permission was originally granted in 2012, the clinical and funding landscape has shifted, with the need to refresh the proposals to align with modern healthcare needs and deliver a building within the NHP's budget. The revised proposals help the Trust to respond to rising rates of cancer nationally and achieve our goals of earlier and faster cancer diagnosis and treatment, reduced waiting times and improved outcomes for those with cancer. The new centre will increase capacity for outpatient treatments, helping people to avoid unnecessary hospital admission. This includes a dedicated urgent treatment centre for cancer patients, providing an alternative to A&E, particularly important for those who are immunocompromised. For those needing care in hospital, there will be 36 dedicated beds, 26 more than now. The centre will facilitate growth in clinical research and access to innovative treatments, and also provide world-class facilities to attract and retain the best healthcare professionals. The proposed building is the outcome of an extensive design development and engagement process with clinicians, patients and user groups, ensuring the layout and functionality meets clinical requirements and delivers an excellent patient experience. The proposals have also been refined through a process of pre-application consultation with BHCC and local highway authority, and through public consultation to ensure clinical needs are balanced against the site sensitivities, neighbours' concerns and local policy. The application represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to transform cancer treatment and provide world-class care, enhance the patient experience and further research advancements. Thank you for considering our proposal, and we respectfully request your support for this application and the benefits it will provide to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Could you switch your microphone? Lovely, thank you. I'm told that we've also got Jonathan Steele, Strategic Capital Programme Manager, University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust, Tom Rudd, Associate Town Planner, BDP, Antonia May, Senior Town Planner, BDP, and Grace Blizzard, Associate Transport Planner, WSP. Is that right? To answer questions. Excellent, thank you.
We've also got Laura Wells from the Highways Internal Council team online.
Excellent. So do the committee members have any questions for the applicant, Councillor Robinson? Oh, sorry, applicant and resident, I'm told.
I have a little list, so I'll go through them, and perhaps the applicant may need to call in some of their colleagues. So, first question, how many outpatient appointments in this cancer centre per day? This question should have already been posed to you by officers, so you should know. I'll tick it off as I go. Next question. I can see in the original plans that there were 40 car parking spaces designated for cancer patients. Can we come to an agreement that a quantity of parking spaces will be designated for cancer treatment? I personally underwent cancer treatment myself at the Royal Marsden in Sutton last year, and found that the process there very simple. Next, a lot of this is parking related, I'm afraid. Next question, if we were to accept this reduced number of parking spaces, could the hospital please install some kind of digital system that indicates to arriving patients where there are parking spaces in one of the two areas? I must admit I haven't driven there myself, but I can imagine it'd be really complicated for somebody from outside of the city to know where to go to park to get access to one of the 2 parking spaces, one underneath the Louisa Martindale and one in under the existing high level multi-story. Thank you. Last question. How much busier? So I've asked about the number of appointments, but generally, how much busier is this new Sussex Cancer Centre going to be than the existing one, the pictures of which we saw in that red building that's going to be demolished? Roughly, what sort of percentage of to in and fro will there be? Thank you. Sorry there were so many.
Good afternoon, committee. My name's Jonathan Steele. I'm the Strategic Capital Programme Manager for the Trust, as the Chair has said. So in answer to your first question, we are forecasting that there'll be in the region of 350 outpatient appointments per day at the Cancer Centre. That's an increase of around 100 compared to what we are currently experiencing. Just to give so that kind of answers the question for, I think, as well, in terms of giving an indication of the sort of increase in activity. These are all forecasts based on kind of historic growth and what we expect to see, but that's sort of the ballpark figure. So the next question was in relation to disabled parking. Is that, sorry.
Oh, please.
Designated parking for cancer care patients.
Thank you. So we, as has been referenced, we have had engagements with patients as well as with internal stakeholders and for example, our transport and parking teams. So we do understand and recognise the concern around provision of parking, particularly for cancer patients that may need to attend regularly or who, of course, may well be quite unwell at the time of their visit. So we fully intend to look at the appropriate allocation of dedicated parking within the Louisa Martindale building basement car park for cancer patients, as that's the closest patient and visitor parking available. We haven't set a number for that as of yet. It will be reviewed nearer to the time. There is already also dedicated parking provided next to the Macmillan Horizon Centre, which we acknowledge is further from the new cancer centre than existing, but that precedent of provision is already our kind of standard practice.
Yes, the question on the digital system to indicate spaces. So in terms of that, at the moment, we are looking at ANPR across the sites, but in terms of digital system, I don't see why that wouldn't be a problem in terms of indicating where the spaces are.
Just to add to that as well, so both the Louisa Martindale building basement car park and the North multi-storey car park are accessed via Bristol Gate. So it's that same access road to get to both. And the Louisa Martindale building car park does already have a digital sign showing the number of spaces available within the basement car park as you're driving past that. So you can see if there is something available there, or if you need to carry on up to the North car park. But I think we are certainly looking at improving the situation for the North car park.
Councillor Robinson, did you have one more question, or was that it? Was your last question?
We may require there to be a number of spaces designated for cancer patients by condition. I think you saying that you're going to look into it and happen in the future probably isn't certain enough for us. So could that be something we could talk about later on then?
I was just going to say that the Highways Authority have recommended a car park management plan, to be the details of which would be secured by condition. So that might be a good opportunity to work out a number through that process in terms of cancer patients, disabled parking, and so on. Because obviously, as you're aware, they're intending to remove that condition entirely, which sets out certain amounts. So I think we could do it through the approval of details for a car park management plan.
And Councillor Theobald. Thank you, Chair. You said the number of patients have increased a lot to 350 probably a day. Has the area increased as well? Because people come from a great distance. What's the area it actually covers there? The other question is that the race ground, what's the agreement there? Is it a fixed time? You know, we've got so many years there, or is there a fixed time on that one? And can you tell me why the underground car park was removed? You know, what was the reasons for that, the main reason? Thank you.
I'll start off with the last first, if that's okay. So in terms of the removal of the underground car park, it's because, like many other construction projects in the UK, cost challenge has been significant, and also in terms of time challenges as well. And particularly on larger projects, you know, time is significant in terms of cost, because you are paying additional costs for the contractor to be there. So that's the last item. Sorry, the other two items were around the timescale for the leases that we've got. Let me just have a check. Yeah.
So in relation to our off-site provision, as the presenting officers mentioned, we have it on 2 sites at the moment, one at Brighton Racecourse and one at Whitehawk FC. Brighton Racecourse, the lease for that is due to expire next year, but because of essentially the provision of off-site car parking for staff and a park and ride service is a key element of our green travel plan as a trust, which has been introduced since the previous consent. It's not just the Royal Sussex County Hospital site that has that provision, but we have that across our other major sites as well. So that strategy and that requirement is kind of key to the operation of our hospitals and our commitment to sustainability. So we will be looking to renew that lease. For Whitehawk FC, we are close to agreeing a 5-year license or lease for that site.
And just the area it cover for the hospital.
So the existing Sussex Cancer Centre and the new Sussex Cancer Centre are one site within our wider trust that delivers cancer care. So our other hospitals in Chichester, in Worthing, in Haywards Heath, and then the hospital in Eastbourne also provide day services such as chemotherapy and other treatments like that, and have inpatient accommodation and care for cancer patients as well. What's unique and special about the site at the Royal County Hospital is that it's what we refer to as a tertiary service. So things like radiotherapy and some of the more specialist cancer treatments, many of which currently are only provided, for example, up at the Royal Marsden or other London sites. We would be looking to deliver more out of Brighton. So it doesn't fundamentally have any impact on the cancer services provided at those other sites. This is about expanding the capacity for Brighton and the local area for those sort of those secondary services, and also giving us the ability to expand those tertiary specialist services to allow those to provide those treatments closer for residents of Sussex rather than them having to go to London.
Thank you.
I
Councillor
think
Nairn?
also just to add to that, if that's okay, just in terms of the environment that the patients will be experiencing in the new centre, it's vastly improved over the current one. And in terms of the dignity that it affords the patients and in terms of their treatment, that'll be way so much better than they have at the moment. Finally, also just to add to that, in terms of incidence of cancer, they are rising amongst the UK population. So obviously that's particularly a reason for the capacity that we're looking for there as well.
Thank you. Councillor Nairn?
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Burden and I think the residents mentioned that there was an alternative configuration that saw the building moved closer to the existing buildings and the public space moved to the edge towards a more residential area. Was that considered? I don't know who I'm addressing this to, by the way, sorry. Was that considered at all?
Yes, is there one of the applicants presumably can help? Thank you.
Yeah, so if I make a start, and then this is Tom Rudd from BDP, who's our planning consultant. He can chip in to add. So we looked at the possible configurations of the building on the site. Early on, we looked at a wide range of potential options. I suppose what might be helpful is just to explain some of the reasons that we feel the proposal is the best to balance a lot of different requirements and drivers. So the presenting officers mentioned that the previous consent had the similar single-storey terrace to the west of the site. So we, as this is an amendment application, we did want to obviously consider the previously consented scheme and retain similarities with that. The opportunity to provide a public realm space that was accessible from Eastern Road is obviously a key benefit, an opportunity that is sort of an added bonus in addition. So I suppose our concerns with moving the building further east is that you would either narrow that space further, and that would, I think, impact on, for example, the concerns around that becoming a wind tunnel as it's currently designed with a 13-metre gap. If that gap was halved, then I think that wind tunnel effect would be even greater, and the usability of that space would be severely compromised. The same goes for example, daylight and direct sunlight onto that space. So we feel that having that as a large space as possible is optimum. The reason locating it in where it is also just helps to create, I suppose, an arrival space and front door for the county hospital site overall. The Louisa Martindale building already has its main entrance on its southwest corner, which will be opposite the proposed entrance to the cancer centre and directly off that public plaza. So the drop-off lay-by, that public space, all coordinates and works together with not only the entrance to the cancer centre, but also the entrance to the Louisa Martindale building. And I guess the final thing that I'll just highlight is that actually the space between the proposed cancer centre and Louisa Martindale building quite nicely frames the Children's Hospital. And I do understand residents' concerns around the impact of the building on their views and daylight and sunlight, etc. The reality is that for every metre that you move it away from Upper Abbey Road, it will block a metre more of the Children's Hospital. So there are always different stakeholders that need to be considered, and the impact on one will often be a benefit to another. So looking at overall the overall picture, we feel that the positioning as it is an appropriate appropriate compromise, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Would you like to take a seat? I don't know. My legal advisor just saying that maybe you should just, if you two could move up, then you can just take your chair over there and squeeze in. Thank you. Oh, and then we can see you on the camera as well. Good point.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Tom Rudd. I'm Associate Director of Town Planning at BDP and the Trust's planning consultant. I think Jonathan's covered the main points, but just to add a bit more context on the kind of options that were reviewed. There was initially a very long list of alternative options. I think it was up to 16 different configurations, which went through an options appraisal, looking at it from lots of different angles in terms of buildability, planning, similarities to the previous scheme, in terms of its clinical function, as there was lots of people and different voices involved in terms of shaping that scheme itself. We did always want to treat this as an amendment application. We didn't want to come back and have a brand new application. Effectively what we've retained is the courtyard function, the layout of the building, which is the same as the previous consent. I think just to go back to sort of the reason behind the question, I believe, which was to do with could there be a space created to the west of the building, pushing the building further away from Upper Abbey Road. I think what we've done essentially is retain that kind of single story Upper Abbey Road, which gives some of that distance. It was correct, there's reference to the 5-story being moved further to the east, which is correct. But I think the main thing for me, speaking from a sort of urban design perspective of why the building is in the right position, is because one of the weaknesses of the current hospitals, it really doesn't have a front door. So if you're arriving to the Royal Sussex, it's not very legible. People get lost. You kind of wander up Bristol Gate, you wander up Upper Abbey Road, you end up walking a bit down a service road. Is this where I should be or not? And then really the reason behind that new civic space was to create a legible, welcoming front door where everyone knows this is the way into the hospital through the Louisa Martindale building, where they'll be directed to the appropriate part of the hospital. If you were to put the space to the west of the building on Upper Abbey Road, it is not by the front door of the hospital. I think there's close to 1 million people who will go through that front door a year. It needs a large space to serve that. As you can see, if you go there at the moment, there's not a large space. It's very crowded. It needs that sort of breathing space. It's a tall building next to it. And also, if you just had, say you sort of pushed the cancer centre up to Louisa Martindale, put the space the other side, you don't want, it would put the space, it wouldn't be actively overlooked in the same way as it is between the middle of the building next to the Louisa Martindale building, and it would create a kind of operational headache to try and keep that secure and safe, whereas in the middle it's kind of naturally surveilled on all sides by the hospital, so which will help security teams at the hospital keep that safe for everyone.
Mr. Redpath, did you want to? Yes. Could you come and use a microphone, please?
It would seem that you're obtusely misreading our suggestion. Nobody's suggesting moving the front door of the hospital to the west. We're suggesting moving your building to the east and having a space which moves the building away from our homes and allows a possible healing space for patients rather than a vast smoking area at the front of the hospital or an expanded smoking area from what we currently have. And can I ask a question? Would it affect in any way whatsoever the quality of care offered in the building
Redpath,
if you moved it?
You're not in a position to ask questions, I'm sorry. Well, no, they had 3 minutes as well, but they are now being asked questions. Thank you. Councillor Winder.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to go back to the issue about accessibility and a travel plan for an integrated approach of accessing the hospital, because it feels like it's been pieced together a little bit, but possibly without having that idea that not everybody has a car. People might be travelling in from other hospitals to get specialist care. And so train and bus travel from outlying districts is going to be really important as well. And I didn't know whether you had mapped all that out and considered how many people might potentially from the population be travelling in for specialist care and how they might access the buildings if they don't have a car. Thank you.
Could I just ask, is that a question possibly for the planners and for our highways department or for the applicant? Not sure. Would you?
I think I would say I'm partly speaking for the highway department here, but they have a draft travel plan was submitted with the planning application. The highways team have reviewed it. They don't think it goes far enough, but I think I'll just point out the travel plan is a requirement of the Section 106 agreement, so it doesn't have to be agreed as part of this application, but it does have to be agreed prior to occupation of the stage 2 building. So I think there's quite a bit of work to do on that travel plan, but it can be developed in negotiation with our highway authority.
Did that answer your question? Yeah. Councillor Elfie.
I think I've got two questions and an observation. The first two questions, are you going to kind of do what the Royal Marsden in Sutton does, which is have designated drop-off and pick-up points to enable people to go right up to the door and drop off patients? Because certainly a lot of your patients are not going to actually arrive on their feet. They're going to be in cars being driven by volunteers or relatives. So it'd be a much better idea to drive right up to the door, get a wheelchair from the rack, wheel the patient into reception, and then go back to the car and park. So that's the first thing. It's got easy to do. The second thing is, are you going to have a dedicated bus stop outside the door? Again, like the Royal Marsden. The Royal Marsden front door is a bus stop on a route. It's a terminus. So about 5 or 6 buses that actually go to and from there. So that's actually quite important for integrated transport.
Councillor Earthy, could you keep your observations for the debate section and just leave it at the question?
That's a question.
I know, but you said you wanted to make an observation. Could you keep that until the debate section?
Well, there was a question at the end of the observation, but I can leave it till. But those, okay, I'll stop at the 2 questions, but they were definitely questions.
They were definitely questions. I thought you were going on to an observation. That's why I was asking. But if you have another question, then by all means, ask another question.
I'll do it.
Is the applicant able to?
So in terms of the front of the hospital, there is dedicated drop-off car parking available there at the front of the hospital. Also in terms of bus routes, the current hospital is served by a very wide range of buses to and from the station as well. And also generally in terms of accessibility, I know going back to the previous question where you referred to the highways department, I'd just like to say in terms of an NHS trust, we consider that, in terms of we want everybody to be able to access our services and make it as easy as possible to access them, because we're here to serve all members of the community. I don't know if there's anything anybody wanted to add in terms of the drop-off.
So it's a big challenge for the county hospital at the moment, that availability of good spaces for that kind of drop-off procedure that you've mentioned. So as part of the stage 2 development, we are proposing to create a whole new kind of lay-by area off of Eastern Road, comes off of the main road, for around, I think it's 7 or 8 vehicles will be able to be there at one time. And that's directly outside the Cancer Centre entrance and the Louisa Martindale building entrance, and kind of fits in with that public plaza area. So it all works together to significantly improve that situation. We're also taking the opportunity at the back of the stage 2 building to provide additional patient transport drop-off area. Again, that's a huge challenge for the site at the moment. Non-emergency ambulances don't have a lot of space to go to, and we often end up with those patient ambulances and, in fact, blue light ambulances, unfortunately, queued up waiting to access the site. So we're trying to take the opportunity to improve that situation as well.
Yeah, sorry, not quite clear. The bus stop is actually quite a long way away from the main door, the Louisa Martindale. So it'll be quite a long way away from the front door of your building. Right? It may not sound a long way for an able-bodied person, but I'm sure you pushing somebody in a wheelchair or something, even 100, 200 yards in a howling rainstorm is going to be quite difficult. So what I was suggesting is the Royal Marsden actually does have a bus stop right outside its front door, 20 feet away at most, fully covered walkway. You can off the bus into the hospital quite quickly, as can the people dropping off by car.
So again, Councillor Murphy, I've got a feeling that this might be something that we ought to put in the highway, put to highways. No? I don't know, can the presenting officer help? Is it something you can get highways?
I can ask highways. I mean, I think one thing I just wanted to quickly point out is that there is a lay-by already approved as part of the previous scheme in that location, and the bus stop is where it is. So we could discuss further improvements, but I just point out that we have approved a similar situation to that proposed.
You're talking about the lay-by for drop-offs, not a lay-by for bus stop.
Oh, sorry, lay-by for drop-offs. Yes, yeah.
That's already been approved.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, sorry. There's some amendments to it. I was just referring to the overall location of it.
Not as deep as that. Yeah. I think it is important to push the NHS on this, but just to take it back to pure planning, they have got an approved scheme, and we are just looking at the pure differences between the approved scheme, and that's a fallback. They can, in theory, bring that forward if they want. So in terms of bus services, it kind of is what it is, and they're doing what they're doing. They're proposing what they're proposing, and they're putting with the travel plan updates through the Section 106 revisions. So it is all positive, I think, in pure planning terms in that regard. Thank you.
Councillor Galvin? Beg your pardon, Councillor Sheard.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask the applicants, because I mean, if I'm understanding this correctly, it's very impressive, because what I'm seeing here is a building that's managed to get taller and smaller at the same time, which is quite impressive. But I want to ask, if we today decide to vote this down and force you to stick to the original application, what is your backup plan to make sure the cancer centre is built? Because it does provide a very vital service for the city.
So in terms of the current funding envelope, if we had to go back to the original proposal, there isn't a budget available for it from Treasury or the New Hospitals Programme.
So to clarify, it's this scheme. So in your eyes, it's this scheme, or there is no new cancer centre.
That's a start way of putting it, but yes.
Councillor Robinson?
Thank you, Chair. Back to the lay-by and the drop-off question that my colleague over there was asking. So I've read through the papers. I've seen the detail about the lay-by. I happen to have a partner who used to work for patient transport, so I know what a nightmare all of that stuff is in that area. I'd question whether a lay-by actually means that you could stop there for a long enough period of time to take your sick relative friend, to take them out of the car into a wheelchair, take them in, bring them back. That's probably half an hour. You know, how many cars of this? How many did you say per day? 350 outpatient appointments per day. How many people are going to want to be parking their car and taking their loved one into the hospital? How are they all going to fit in 7 parking spaces? I really don't think it's realistic. Had we, I get what you've just said now about the lack of funding. Had we have had a car park, then of course people would be parking their cars, putting their loved ones into their wheelchair, trundling them up in the lift. all of that problem would have gone away. I think I'm not sure that this is solvable, really, because I think your answer to that question and your answer about the park and ride that wasn't strong enough, bearing in mind in the documents, we're going to ask for that park and ride to be there in perpetuity. I'm not sure where we're going with this. I don't think it's working. You can come back and argue back, please, but I'm really concerned about this.
I think so. Just to start with, so the lay-by proposed would not be for someone to use for half an hour. It would be a drop-off facility, not a parking facility. So that's the clarification first of all. And then in relation to the car parking, when you compare the previously consented scheme and what was planned for the on-site car parking provided, the patient and visitor numbers previously and now proposed are very comparable. The key difference is that previously the north multi-storey car park was intended to go back to entirely staff use. So our green travel initiatives to take staff parking off-site to decongest the sites, to free up that capacity for patient and visitors is the key change, which has meant that the basement car parks beneath Stage 2 are not required. So the overall parking on site is less, but the parking dedicated to patients and visitors will be comparable to the previous plans that were part of the previously consented scheme.
And I think just to emphasise it in terms of the key part of that is around the off-site car parking that we have at Whitehall and the football club, which takes, we've got at least 500 spaces there.
Just if I can add as well. So we're back in 2012 when the application was originally consented, there was no off-site parking. So there's an additional 530 that have been added into the mix, whilst we specifically under Stage 2, you've lost the 283. By locating all those staff out of the park and ride, there's increased parking for patients at the Royal Sussex. So
Thank you. Can we just go back to the wheelchair scenario then? So where is the relative? Where is the patient who needs a wheelchair? Where are they going to park? Where are they going to get the wheelchair from? And how far has the relative got to travel? I've got no idea how they manoeuvre their way through from the multi-storey car park to the cancer centre. They got to go up and down and round the corner and out in the rain in that lovely open area. Does it make sense?
I think there are a number of options. So obviously you've got the lay-by, which you're not intended to park there for 30 minutes, but there is those pavements have been designed to be wide enough to allow for wheelchair access and to maintain a pedestrian flow behind it. So you've got the lay-by on Eastern Road for the sort of patient, ambulance and transfer. So potentially your more sick patients who need that dignity as well and privacy. There is dedicated lay-by to the rear on the Southern Service Road, which isn't open to the public, and that's to ensure that privacy. So there's not that clash between members of the public, people walking down the road, and people who are desperately ill accessing the cancer centre. And then beyond that, you've got the Louisa Martindale basement car park, which has direct lifts up into the Louisa Martindale building, and there is also an access connecting the two.
So the access connecting the two is through the outside area. So there could be a patient wrapped up in a blanket, or is there some kind of covered way or underneath or?
So there's at the rear of the public plaza, there's a terrace what's underneath that terrace is a direct internal access between the two buildings.
Thank you. I think, I would just like to interject here. I think the reason why we are concerned about the parking, we've talked about dignity, about accessibility, you're intending to triple the numbers from 100 to 350. A day. That is substantial, and but I'm thinking that you've possibly done this before. That this is possibly not your first hospital, or to actually look at these sorts of conundrums, because obviously to our lay eyes, these things need to be joined up and thought through. And I think we're just seeking some reassurance here from you that this is your area of expertise and that you are thinking about this. Because, for example, as my colleague points out, nobody wants to get a parking ticket when they're taking their relative who's got cancer in to have radiotherapy because they've overstayed whatever the allowance is on the drop-off area, and that kind of thing. Could you give us some reassurance, please?
I'll just clarify first of all that the figures, so 350 is the forecast for when the building will open. That's an increase of 100 from now. So the baseline is.
Sorry, I thought you said there were 100 currently.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify that.
There are 250 a day currently, and it's going up to 100 300. Thank you.
Also, just in terms of the car parking, so pre the 3Ts, the total provision, which was mainly on-site, was 447, and there was 61 off-site. That gave a total provision of 508. So in terms of the proposal at the moment, it's on-site provision, which is 476. 107 of those are going to be for staff who are essential staff only, and then off-site, that will be 530. So the total provision post this will be 1,006 spaces.
We've got somebody from Highways here. I just wondered if it was worth having a word. She's online. Laura, are you with us? Would you be able to give us a little bit of help and guidance?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Laura Wells from Local Highway Authority. Just to come in and say from our point of view, because I know a lot of the points have been around transport and parking. So as noted by the case officer, we are happy with the proposal, subject to the conditions and obligations that have been stated, where some of those details will come in time around the lay-by, around the car park management plan, and the obligations in particular will give us those assurances in perpetuity around the off-site parking. So I understand there will be concerns around the future of that. So we have written that into the obligations to
Is Laura back with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, excellent. We can hear you, Laura. Would you mind reprising what you were saying, please?
Yep, sure. I don't know how much you caught, so I'll start again. But yeah, just from our point of view as local highway authority, we are happy with the proposals, subject to the conditions and obligations that have been set out in terms of some of the details of that. For example, the lay-by, car park management plan, travel plan, and crucially that provision of the off-site parking in perpetuity, so that if arrangements don't work out as are envisaged at this point in time, that we do have that assurance that off-site provision needs to be maintained.
Does anybody have any more questions, or should we move to debate? Oh, Councillor Galvin.
Yeah, it's a very good point there about off-site positions being maintained. I've just heard the hospital trust say that the agreement with the racecourse ends next year. Now, as the racecourse have plans for grandstand and improvements there, that position may not be available, and I wondered if they had entered into negotiations to secure that yet.
Has the highways person not just... my understanding was that the highways person has just said that one of the conditions will be that the NHS Trust must find off-site parking in perpetuity. So if the racecourse does not go ahead, I think that's what she's... I don't know, have I understood that correctly?
Yes, that's exactly the point of the Section 106 obligation, or that addition to it, is to ensure that should at least not be extended for one of those two key sites, that they would have to find another site to provide that off-site staff parking. So maybe they can comment on where they are with the lease at the moment, but what I'm saying is that that's the purpose of that Section 106 agreement, is to prevent, as I say, if any kind of lease falls through, then it ensures that they have to make provisions to find another site to provide that parking. And that's prior to occupation of the site, and as we say, in perpetuity after that. If they don't provide sufficient off-site parking, then they'll be in breach of the Section 106 agreement.
And what happens?
Well, potential enforcement. I mean, that would be the potential next step, but it would have to be considered, and we'd have to consult with our legal team and so on. But that is an option available.
Would the applicant like to come in there? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Just kind of one fundamental point I'd like to make on this. It's really not within the Trust's interest not to provide the off-site parking. So obviously, whilst the Trust wants to enter into the legal agreement via the Section 106 to provide that off-site, the main driver and thing that's going to be pushing them to provide that off-site is their operation of their hospital. That's their business, is to run healthcare services. In order to do that, they need parking. They need their staff to be able to get there. That's the fundamental prerequisite of running their hospital. They're happy to reflect that within the Section 106, and obviously they would do everything they can to meet that obligation because they need the hospital up and running. So yes, the legal agreement, brilliant, but underneath that there is a kind of they have to do it. It's fundamental to their operation.
Councillor Gowan?
Yeah, but just not answering the question if you had entered into negotiations with the racecourse, and to be so difficult to find alternatives to that. And
sorry, Councillor Galvin, we have actually already discussed this because the building won't be complete, and by the time the building is complete, the condition is that they have to find off-site parking. I think that has been established.
Okay, thank you.
Can we move to debate, please? Who would like to start? Councillor Shanks.
We've heard quite a lot of reason why there's a few issues with this application, but basically this is the application we've got. We're not entirely happy with it. And I presume it's to do with, well, it's been said that it's to do with cost, that it's changed over time, but I can't really see a reason for refusing it at this now. So I will be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sheard.
Oh, sorry.
Slightly worried there. She didn't want me to speak for a second. I am really on the fence about this. We do need a cancer centre. We do need this. And as I asked earlier, it's either this or nothing. But I am shocked and a bit angry at the trust that there wasn't the contingency plan when the original plans came forward. You went ahead and demolished the previous building going, oh, no, wait, we can't fund what we've already promised. Let's go back and change it again. And it's very, very annoying that we are now stuck in this position that we're having to go through and see these amendments come through in front of us. And I'm a bit upset that it's come to this, and we aren't and as I said earlier, the building's getting taller, it's getting smaller, and somehow this just feels like everything is going in the wrong direction for what we want to see. Obviously, however, well, that's not the point here. We are here to discuss what is in front of us as materially planned, and I don't want this. I think, along with most other people, want what was what was proposed in the original drawings at the earlier stage. However, that's not on the table now. It's either this or it's nothing, as we've already found out. And I want to say no, but at the same time, I don't see what other option there is open to us. We do need this life-saving building for the city.
Could I just ask if
if I could just jump in.
Yeah.
I think as the NHS spelt out, well, we do have to consider what's in front of us and whether it's acceptable. And in planning terms, they are perfectly entitled to make an application to amend it or to come in with a new application. They don't have any obligation. No applicant has an obligation to build what they've got permission for. They can apply for an amendment. So I understand the emotions around the NHS and our cancer centres and all that. But again, stepping back, this is what they're proposing, and we need to consider whether it's acceptable. And as the NHS have said, this is fit for purpose. The previous scheme was not fit for purpose in terms of what they actually need to deliver the cancer services for the, for Sussex, whatever that is, wider county type area region. So we need to consider the application in front of us and in pure planning terms, whether it's acceptable. Thank you.
I understand that. I'm not trying to dispute that. I'm aware of that. I just think that, as has been spelt out by the residents' objections, that I don't think that the older building would have received planning consent to begin with if it wasn't fit for, if the NHS didn't deem it fit for purpose already for what it was going to be. So from the planning perspective, in that sense, both the original plan and this plan is fit for purpose as deemed by the trust. So that isn't the part that I'm upset with. What I'm annoyed is that they proposed this fit for purpose building. At one point, they went ahead, started working on the start. They demolished the old building, ready for that new planned building to come in. And then at the point that they were starting to put digs in the ground, that's when they went that they cannot provide this building. That is that we don't actually have the ability to build that. That feels like they have gone in without. They have submitted one planning permission, and whilst I accept and understand that they are well within their right to do what they have done, that's why we are here. We wouldn't be here if they weren't within their right to do so. I still feel that there isn't the situation leading up to this and the reason why this application has come in demonstrates a lack of foresight on behalf of the trust, and that is what upsets me. Now, I understand not planning. I can see Jane getting really twitchy with that microphone finger there and to tell me off. So I will move on to the material planning considerations here. I wanted to spell out my dissatisfaction at what has led up to this before I got going. So we, like I said, we need a cancer centre in the city. In relation to transport, there is already as with, I think, most hospitals in the country, especially inner city ones, there is always a challenge around parking. And I think we're going to be very dubious on the 106 part about requiring off-site parking, because that requires off-site people to play ball with the NHS Sussex. And if, for example, the racecourse don't renew their contract, they're then looking for off-site parking in a part of the country where parking space is at a premium, which to try and deliver that part of the 106 deal, which I think is going to be a very big challenge going forward for them, which makes me. I understand it's their problem, but we're the ones who are going to be granting it, so it's something I want to take into consideration. But we do, as I've been circling around, we need a building to provide this vital service for the city and for the wider community outside of Brighton and Hove, although obviously they're letter to all Brighton and Hove citizens, because we're not biased in this room to that. And we do need this, so I think I'll be voting for it, but that doesn't stop me feeling very, very disappointed at the situation that led up to this.
Councillor Earthy and then Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Councillor Earthy. So thank you for all of the responses you've given to my many questions. I'm not happy with it. Say I've had the misfortune, as it were, to experience the treatment and how one arrives at a car park at the Royal Marsden in Sutton. This is miles away from that. You're talking about kind of expanding the provision to more patients, wider area. But I do get the fact that overall the number of parking spaces that are in this proposal now is slightly more than there was before this started. But I strongly, in the transport plan, we really must have a number of parking spaces designated for cancer patients. Because all very well saying, yes, you can wheel your partner through from the Louisa Martindale, but there's got to be a parking space in there for them. And I think this is so important. So this is what makes it so difficult for us, because I'm veering towards saying yes, whereas a week ago I wouldn't have done. But it's so difficult when. How can we guarantee that we're going to get those parking spaces? So you said we're going to review the transport plan. Is there some way that we can beef up that to make me feel comfortable? Is there some way we can beef up the requirement that X spaces, so there were 40, so one assumes there ought to be 40 again or more, because you've got more cancer patients coming in. If I can be comfortable that will really happen, then I can vote for this. Thank you.
Councillor Theobald. Thank you. Well, I was actually here I was in this committee when it was the original plan was here, and there was worry about car parking then, but we were sort of understood about the underground car parking, so that sort of satisfied the committee at the time. To go down from like 390 spaces to 98 is a lot, and it's a real worry. It's a nightmare to park anywhere near that hospital, and so even the multi-storey car park, which I tried out, was pretty full up. And then I got in a tiny space, and I got out, and I actually gashed my arm on somebody's wing mirror because it was so near. It was a horrible experience. The race ground, as has been said, it may not be permanent to stay there, so that could be a problem. And of course, less car parking there means more car parking on the streets. So the poor neighbours have got to have all these cars. It seems also, with increasing the height of this, seems a bit of a waste of space. You think we could probably get another floor in there of boards, It does seem ridiculous. The original design that I saw on there, it seemed to have more character than this. Just look rather boxy, the way it is now. So I prefer the original one. Now, I do welcome the cancer unit. I know it's something, very essential, very good for the city, but also car parking is essential. And, to have a patient come and from some of them from a distance and have to worry about parking somewhere is terrible. So I'm afraid more parking is needed on this site. So I'm afraid I won't be voting for this. Thank you.
Just in terms of parking, I would just remind you that the highways officer hasn't objected to it. So that is a slippery slope in terms of raising that as, potentially as a reason for refusal. If that's what you are steering towards, if we haven't got the highways authority supporting that, then it's dangerous. And we can't go back to what we had. This is, as I've said, this is what they are proposing. And there's a reason, because that was approved in 2012, there's a reason in 13 years that the needs have changed, and the requirement, the increased outpatients and all those sorts of things have all changed. And so the requirements on site have changed. But thank you.
Councillor Oakley.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I completely share Councillor Sheard's unhappiness about this, so am I, but like him, we're just going to judge what's in front. Some of this stuff I find quite bizarre. There's something earlier on, and I share a lot of sympathy with the residents about the exact siting of this building. When you turn up to a cancer centre to receive cancer treatment, I don't really think you're worried about the aesthetics. So the idea of somebody arriving at this centre worried that they can't quite see the children's hospital, I think is completely irrelevant. Looking at the plan, I think that gap between the new building and the Louisa Martindale is actually a complete waste of space, literally. It is going to just attract smokers and things. It's useless. So if it was down to me, I would actually allow the building to kind of move slightly and be joined up with the Louisa Martindale as it was in the original plan, and give more space on the western side to the residents. So yes, the other thing I also agree with Councillor Robinson, the Royal Marsden in Sutton is a very model of efficient arrival, unloading and departure. It's got a very, very strict one-way system, works extremely well, because as I say, I've not experienced cancer as a patient, but I have been a carer to somebody who sadly passed away with it and getting to the Royal Marsden and unloading them was never, ever a problem, which took one thing off. So I think there are very, very important lessons for the Trust down here to learn from that. So I would absolutely insist to whoever's listening, they can actually do that. So that, like Councillor Sheard, I will very reluctantly be putting this through. We can't possibly turn it down on the grounds we must have a cancer centre for the city and the region, but it must be fully accessible, and I'm not at all happy with the arrangements that we've got at the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Winder.
Thank you. I feel very much the same, that there's something that's kind of missing about future-proofing against the increasing numbers of people who'll be seeking treatment there in a specialist centre. And there'll be a lot more people travelling in and out of the city to come to the hospital. And of course, we do need a cancer centre. And so it is slightly disappointing that all this time has gone by and you haven't kind of thought ahead a little bit more about what the needs might be. But I accept that, we're looking at a proposal as it stands, and we have to look at it as it is. So I will be voting for it, because obviously we do need a cancer centre. But I don't know if anybody would like to think again about what these comments have been at this meeting. And maybe we can't talk about that, but it would be helpful to have a little bit more future-proofing of what this proposal actually is, and to think perhaps there could be some additions or some models put in place that might add to it in the future. But yes, I will be voting for it because it's needed.
If I could just jump in. That's literally their job, is to future-proof it and to predict, to cater to what is the anticipated number of patients that would come to the hospital. It's not our job we just need to approve whether it's a good land use and whether this is an appropriate hospital visually and all those sorts of things. And Councillor Earthy, in terms of views, it wasn't views of the Children's Hospital, it was views from the Children's Hospital. Having been there are lovely views. So I think that's what they're talking about, preserving with the gap. But also, I think...
Sorry, the gap wasn't there. So suddenly arrives back, oh, that's lovely.
But I just wanted to, because everyone's talking about the Royal Marsden, and this is a very basic view, but this is where the Royal Marsden is located. It's on the... It's big and green. This is an inner city hospital. So they've got these big areas of parking possible, the possibility for parking around it. There's not the land in Brighton. That's sort of filling up the space around them. So just as a point, whilst acknowledging we are considering the application in front of us instead of the Royal Marsden. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm listening to everybody's comments, and I think we're making fair comments, and I think we've got some people from the NHS Trust here who I think are taking them on board. I feel that we've had a good conversation, and again it is thinking all of it through, and it does seem to me that, as Jane points out, this is their job to think these things through about how people arrive, about how they get dropped off, about how they get their treatment. We have to put our faith in these people that, as I say, they've done it before and that they are thinking through every stage and that they are looking to the future because they're going to be increasing the numbers by 100 a day. I think we need to make sure that we have robust conditions in place that I think has been agreed, that highways have said as well, that there is a good, transport management plan, and whether that means, parking off-site, public transport access, all of it. We need an integrated solution, and before they open their doors. But I am minded to approve. Thank you. So, shall we go to the vote? All those in favour? And all those against? Are you against, Councillor Theobald? Okay. Thank you.
To confirm, Chair, that's 8 for and 1 against. Thank you.
Shall we go for a break until 4:30? And I'd just like to thank everybody for participating this afternoon. Everybody here. Item B, 126 Gloucester Road, BH 2022-02-689. The presenting officer is Jane Mason.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, 126 Gloucester Road. Oh, sorry. Where it's a deed of variation. So they're seeking to vary the existing section 106. So it's not a deed of variation at all. Sorry, we've agreed a heads of terms when we granted planning permission in March 2023. And they're seeking to vary the head of terms attached to that. So planning permission was agreed in March 2023, allowing the change of use of part of the ground floor and of the first floor from commercial, so Class E, to residential, and the raising of the roof height to provide 5 residential units. This was subject, so it was agreed by members subject to a head of term requiring £254,300 in a commuted sum towards affordable housing. They haven't agreed the Section 106 agreement, so they're just now seeking to go ahead with the planning permission, removing that requirement. So the committee agreed the scheme was acceptable, and they were minded to grant it subject to the Section 106 being signed off, which would secure highway works, a new footway junction and at the junction of Gloucester Passage and Gloucester Road, and a commuted sum. But the applicant has since submitted viability information that shows the scheme wouldn't be viable with that commuted sum. The sole issue to consider, therefore, is whether the scheme would be acceptable with the removal of that head or term, so without that amount of money being paid towards affordable housing in the city. So just the background, the application site, so it's just down from the station in Brighton Station in the North Lanes. This is the location plan. This is the site here. So in the white, you can see the Eagle pub just to the left of the screen. Existing and proposed. So on the left is the existing, which we've just seen in the picture, and on the right is what they propose. So a slight raise in the roof, a dormer in the front, and converting it. So on the ground floor, they would retain commercial use on the front, but have a dwelling to the rear and on the floors above. This is the west elevation. These are all agreed, so these are the agreed floor plans. The considerations, so the development, as I've said, would provide 5 residential units, so a two 1-bed units, two 2-bed units, and a 3-bed unit, and 187 metres squared of commercial space. An updated viability appraisal confirms it would not be viable if the commuted sum of £254,300 was paid. The appraisal has been reviewed by council-appointed external consultants who disagreed with some of the calculations, but overall agreed the scheme could not viably support this contribution. So they came in originally, as is set out in the report, and they said, we don't think it's viable. The DBS went back and said, we think it is, but with a reduced sum. Then they came back in and with some more details that were reviewed again by a second consultant who also got a quantity surveyor to look at the calculations, and they confirmed, no, it wouldn't be viable. So the Strategic Housing and Development Officer raises no objection on the basis the scheme accords with planning policy, whilst acknowledging they don't generally like to see commuted sums disappearing, obviously, because it goes towards affordable housing. But they note that it would be in accordance with our planning policy, which allows flexibility in that regard. And also we are securing a late stage review. So once the application, the development has come forward and the actual real life figures are there, then we'd do a review of the actual numbers. And if at that point they could provide some money towards affordable housing, we would get it at that point. So in conclusion and the planning balance, the scheme is considered acceptable as confirmed by the planning committee. So the overall scheme is considered to be acceptable in terms of impact on residential amenity and all those usual things and design. And it would provide 5 residential units contributing towards the housing need in the city and commercial space. The removal of the requirement for an affordable housing commuted sum has been shown to be necessary to make the scheme viable, and that's been reviewed by external consultants, and that's in accordance with policy CP20 of City Plan Part 1, which allows for a more flexible application of the policy, taking into account the financial viability of developing the site. So it's recommended that members are minded to grant approval of the scheme, subject to 2 head of terms. So the contribution towards highway works and a late stage viability review to confirm whether a commuted sum could be provided at that point. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions? Councillor Shanks.
So have they offered anything other, or is just nothing or review it? So there is no offer for a sort of lower sum. And does this attract SIL funding then, as well as S106, or, and if so, how much? Just see if we're getting any money at all.
They haven't offered anything in terms of any contribution. It just wouldn't be viable. They started with a lower amount, but then said it wouldn't be viable with that. In terms of SIL, I'll come back to you on that. I presume so.
Councillor Calvin.
Thank you, Chair. This is the old familiar story of people coming to get planning permission, saying there'll be affordable housing, and then saying they can't afford it, and we have to give in to them. I would like to know how they say the 5 units will contribute to the housing problem in the city. I would like to hear how that is going to happen. Will they be available to rent? Will they be available to the council? In what way will it contribute to the housing problem in our city at the moment?
Yes, thank you. They would just be available as standard dwellings, but that is considered to contribute to the housing need across the city. Thank you.
Councillor Nairn.
Who will do the late stage review?
We would ask for it'd be the same sort of process. So they'd come up with the statistics, the figures, and we would review them. Yeah. The council, yeah. So we would get the same sort of external consultants who know these things to review those figures.
Councillor Shear.
Just how much was it the exploration of reducing the fee explored?
In enormous detail. So we've had 2 different sets of our external consultants look at it. They've submitted. They went back to them and asked for even more information. And we've got the most up to date information on all the build costs, which the quantity surveyors looked at, and all those sorts of things. And they, as I said, they did disagree on a lot of things. There is information online showing their viability assessment and the other information that's been submitted, and our viability consultant's response. So yes, hugely in depth.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm comforted by the fact that there will be a late stage review, and that will be based on the actual costs. So I presume that can be open book, therefore we'll know that they really are the actual costs. Does the applicant pay for all of these appraisals that we've done? I presume so, because they've come and asked us to reduce this sum, so they've incurred some extra costs for this. Whilst it really, really great to give away money that would have been spent on affordable housing, I think we still need the 5 units. So I think we're probably caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yes, just they would pay for they have paid for the external consultants on repeat. So yeah, they have absorbed that. And on SIL, they will have to pay £57,750. So it's something.
Councillor Theobald.
I just want to ask, we've had a few of these late state, is it called, reviews before. Have they been successful? Have we got anything out of these people before? Not these particular, any other application?
Yes, we're not sure on that at this stage, but it is written into the Section 106 legal agreement, so we can hold them to it. Thank you.
Any further questions, or should we move to debate? Beg your pardon, Councillor? No, I said, are there any more questions or shall we move to debate? Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Or following on from what I said a few minutes ago, whilst yes, it's very annoying to give up this money, I don't really think we have much choice, and we'll have the 5 homes and have the opportunity to have a second bite at the cherry later, and we're getting 57,500 in SIL, so I think I will be voting for it. Thank you.
Councillor Theobald.
Well, I'm actually fed up with the applicants for getting away with it all the time. It seems to me that they obviously paid too much for the site, or it's paid too much, and they should have known this before. It does seem that they've even agreed a lower amount, and then those didn't agree it. It's a shame they didn't take that up, really, isn't it? I'm really, we're not.
You have a question, Councillor?
No, this is great. Yeah. I'm just fed up with the way people are getting away with not providing any affordable housing. Thank you.
If I can just come back on the land value, it's not based on what they buy it for or what they sell it for, any of those things. It's based on benchmark land value. So none of these, it's all very set in stone. All the profits and those sorts of things, it's all done by a set formula. Thank you.
Councillor Shanks.
I'm not really minded to vote for it, because if they don't want to do it, they'll come back again. And I mean, they've got planning permission, so it's entirely up to them really whether they carry on and pay us the money that we are expected to get, or whether they don't. And I would have thought, actually, it's not that much money compared to the overall cost of 5 houses that they're going to sell. So I don't know. I'd be willing to risk not approving it, just because I think, we keep getting this, and I know where it is. It needs improving, that building, but I don't know. Otherwise, I mean, I'll either vote against or abstain. But I know we don't like abstentions.
Councillor Galvin, then Councillor Dan.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this is looking like, 250,000 on profit end as 3 million, value of 3 million on the final build. It's quite penny pinching, but it's a continuous thing. How can develop come and get a planning permission on a promise of 250,000, and they say, oh, we don't want to pay that. Our directors need that kind of money in their pocket. We're not going to give it to the council, and they come back to us. I mean, it's absolute. This is going on and on for so long. The promises of social housing, and developers can come back and say we can't build 40% social housing. Circus development is typical of it. 14. We were over 400 properties. We got 14. I mean, where does this end? I mean, they came with a plan. We accepted the plan. We gave them permission to plan, and I said, they go home and think about it. No, we need that money for our yacht, 250,000. I mean, I really. Okay, well, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I just thought I'd clarify that the level of profit is set as a figure as well. So that's a standard number that they use, that the level of profit is 17% that they're allowed, that's being accepted by national guidance, the National Planning Policy Framework guidance, that's what they're allowed to make. So it's not that they are spending it necessarily, but that they might spend the 17% on yachts, but that's for them to decide. Thank you.
But that's the point, I think, isn't it? The fact that they can't just say, we want that for our profit or for our pockets or our yachts or whatever, because they can only make a limited amount of profit. Yeah. Councillor Robinson. Oh, sorry. Yes, Councillor Robinson.
And I think the point is, where we're going to have this late stage review, which will be open book, we'd see if they were spending any money on yachts or not. They would have to give us the money. If they made enough profit, they would have more than the 17%. They would have to give us the money that was planned in the beginning. So,
Councillor Nairn.
Yeah, I'm kind of frustrated because it feels like a bait and switch, even if it isn't. I can't just check with Jane. So if we refused this, they appealed all the work that they've done to establish that it's not viable. Would that be what the appeal will be based on? Okay. Yeah. Cheers. It's depressing.
Councillor Shind.
Thank you. I'm not sure what's going on with all the yacht talk, but I agree with Councillor Nan says it. Even if it's not, it does feel a bit like a bait and switch. And on one side, I'm aware that if we've had independent adjudicators talking over this, that we are not going to win this on appeal. So we should. So if anything, if we vote against this, we end up not only throwing away the 243 grand that we're losing either way, but we're also throwing away the legal costs that it'll take when this goes to review as well. But on the other hand, it feels very uncomfortable that we've managed to mess up the estimates the first time round to the tune of 243 grand. I mean, I wouldn't be happy if they only came forward with 5p for affordable housing, but it's money we desperately need for affordable housing because, there is none in Brighton. It's one of the most expensive. It's more expensive to live than parts of London at this point. So every penny we can get to keep affordable housing for working people in the city, we should be pushing for as hard as we can. So I think I'm going to be voting for this. I'm just very, 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 very irritated that when we've checked our workings, we've miscalculated by such a margin.
Just coming back on that, it's not a case of we messed it up the first time. It's a case that the numbers have changed. So they initially we said this is the commuted sum, and they said okay, and they got permission, and then they got a recommendation of permission subject to requiring them to pay that 254,000. Then they've come back with the actual figures. So they didn't submit a viability assessment before. They just said, yep, we'll take this, we'll pay that. Now they've come back in with all the details to show that actually it's not viable, and they're perfectly entitled to do that. So I just strongly refute the fact that it's up to officers having messed up the numbers.
So I wasn't accusing officers of miscalculating. I was talking about the applicant in this sense. I wouldn't dare ever say a bad word about that amazing planning team.
It's not the applicant who comes up with these figures either. Is that?
Yeah, it isn't. When they do the viability assessment.
Okay, beg your pardon. One of the things that yes, listen to. Has anybody else got any more comments? Oh, sorry. Back to Councillor Nan, and then I think.
So, Jack, it feels like they haven't done their sums before they came to planning committee the first time, and that's on them. Would that be considered an appeal? Their lack of due diligence.
No, Councillor Nan, I think that's acceptable to submit a planning application, and if once having received their planning permission, they decide to do a viability assessment which shows that the development is not viable, that is perfectly acceptable as well, and that's what happened here. And to reduce the affordable housing contribution is in line with our policy. Councillor Rossi?
Yeah, I'll be brief. I'll share everybody's indignation. I'm a realist, so I'll go with Councillor Robinson. There's going to be a review. We are going to get, was it 53,000 of seal money? Thank you very much. I stand better informed. Thank you very much. Yes, I'd agree with that. So the best compromise I think we're going to get. But I am, like the rest of them, very angry.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Winder.
Yes, I agree with all that's been said. It's a very frustrating situation. We all want more affordable housing, and we see people who are desperate for housing, but we can't do anything about this situation.
Thank you, Councillor. I think we've all aired our disappointment and frustrations
previously about this sort of setup. I mean, I suppose one thing that one would say is that if you've got 5 flats coming into the mix, you know, the more supply there is, you know, the prices come down, you know, the more affordable our city becomes. But obviously, you know, it's a big, much bigger picture. Are we ready to go to a vote? All those in favour? All those against?
To confirm, Chair, that 7 for and 2 against.
Thank you. So the next item is item C. I know my colleague will need to leave the chamber. Item C, BH 2025-00230, Eastbrook Road. And we have Rebecca Smith. Hello, Rebecca.
Good afternoon, councillors. This is 47 Eastbrook Road, BH 2025-00230. The application is for a change of use from single dwelling house C3 to 5-bedroom small house and multiple occupation for up to 6 persons, class C4. And this is the map of the application site. You'll see that the property's here on Eastbrook Road, which is off of Church Road, and you've got Fishersgate Station just in the top of the map there. This is an existing location plan showing that the property is terraced. An aerial view of the property, where you can see the property and the rear garden behind. A 3D aerial photograph of the site. Photograph showing the front elevation with windows for bedroom 1 here, and the upper floor bedroom there, and then the rear elevation showing windows to the communal space and windows to the upper floor bedrooms. This is photographs of the communal space internally. In existing block plan, the proposed floor plan. So here we can see that you've got communal space on the ground floor. That is considered adequate for the maximum of 6 persons that are in the property. Then you've got the ground floor bedroom, which is the bedroom that we consider to be adequate for double occupancy, noting that this is a 5-bedroom development and seeking permission for up to 6 occupants. So that's 12.8 square metres, excluding the ensuite. Moving upstairs to the first floor, you've got a communal bathroom, a bedroom to the front and a bedroom to the rear. Those are 10 and 9.4 square metres respectively. And then on the second floor, you have the rear bedroom, which is 9.3 square metres, and the front bedroom, which has restricted head height, but 8.1 of the floor area is above 1.5 square metres, 1.5 head height. And then in terms, so 4 of the rooms are en suite. This second floor bedroom is not en suite, but there is the bathroom on the floor below and a further WC on the ground floor. In terms of representations, there have been 43 objections to the scheme for the reasons that you see before you on the slide. Then there have been 9 supports. The supports are discussed in the officer report at paragraphs 5.3 and 5.4, where there has been concern raised about how those supports were arrived at with intervention from the applicant in this case. We have summarised how we have looked into that in the officer report of 5.3 and 5.4, and we have attached limited weight to these representations. The key considerations are the principle of the change of use to HMO in terms of CP21 and DM7 density, standard of accommodation, and the impact on neighbour amenity and any transport matters. So in conclusion, the concentration of HMOs within 50 metres of the property is 0%, so complies with CP21. The density of the wider neighbourhood area is 1.56%, which is below the 20% threshold in DM7. The proposed HMO would not create a terrace of 3 or more HMOs. It would not sandwich a non-HMO between HMOs. So we consider that spatially it complies with CP21 and DM7. The standard of accommodation for up to 6 persons across 5 bedrooms is considered acceptable in line with DM7, and that does include the communal space. We consider that the impact on neighbouring amenity is acceptable and that there are no concerns raised in respect to parking or transportation options, so we have recommended the application for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Are there any questions in terms of clarification of Rebecca's presentation, please? Councillor Theobald?
The note here about increased noise and the walls of the house is too thin and so noisy. I just wondered, would it need soundproofing or anything like that, this property being a terrace like that?
So the layout is already in situ within the property. I understand that the applicant has included soundproofing within their build and arrangement of the property, but we haven't tested that at all. It would be something for building regulations.
Just to jump in there, for a small HMO, we wouldn't usually require increased noise attenuation, especially in a scenario like this where it's just a residential area. Thank you.
Sorry, yes, please come back, Councillor.
Is this the only sort of HMO in the road, or are there other ones in the road? You know, is this the first one?
There is another HMO within the street, however, that's outside the 50 metres, so hasn't formed any part of the consideration in terms of density for the application.
Any more questions, or shall I ask the resident to speak?
Thank you. Very, very quickly, in relation to the reduced height bedroom, is the requirement for 80% to be over the 1.5 metre limit a part of the city plan or NPPF guidelines?
So that's in DM1. I would say that I have been to the site and seen the room in situ furnished, and I do consider that for the floor area that we've measured on the plan and the sort of way you can lay the room out, it does have a functional layout for an adult to live.
No, just to clarify, the works aren't retrospective. It is in use as a dwelling at the moment. They're just applying to use it as a HMO. So the bedrooms and the layout and things are as is. They're not changing any of that. They're just changing the use to an HMO. And the layout stuff in terms of the head heights, that's policy DM1, as Rebecca said, which then refers to the nationally described space standard, which has all those sorts of details about head height and things. Thank you.
Any more questions, or may I call the resident? Do we have Robert Selvey here, please? Hello. Good afternoon. So you have a button on the bottom right, and which is your microphone, and then as soon as you start speaking, you have 3 minutes to speak. So whenever you're ready, thank you.
Dear members of the committee, thank you to you and Mr. Hughes for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. Of the approximately 70 houses on Eastbrook Road, I've spoken to the occupants of at least 63 of them, plus residents on the adjacent Brambling Road. As such, I feel confident in saying, in speaking to you today, I'm able to represent the views of my neighbours and members of my community. These neighbours have clearly and articulately outlined their objections and concerns about the conversion of number 47 to an HMO in their 43 opposing comments to the planning application. The extent of the response from the community underlines the strength of their feeling and objections to this development. The concerns raised by residents about stresses on parking, we have unregulated parking, the increase in noise and disruption, the change in the character of the street from a quiet road populated by couples, young families and elderly long-term residents, and the overdevelopment of a small 2-bedroom family home are all legitimate, and I will not do them a disservice of articulating them less well again here. Suffice to say, these issues are not theoretical and are already being experienced by neighbours with the 2 tenants that have already moved into the property. Rather, I'd like to focus the time I have left on 2 issues which were less commented on in the consultation responses, but which I think speak to the real heart of this decision. The first is that approval of this property to an HMO will mean the loss of one of the more affordable family homes in Brighton and Hove. The average house price in Hove last year was $560,000, which I think we can all agree is out of reach for most occupants in this city. In contrast, this home was purchased for £260,000 by the developer, a figure less than half the Hove average and far closer to affordability for people in the city. This house could have made an ideal family home for people in the city, and with your help, I think still can. And I believe we have a moral obligation not to allow these more affordable family homes, there are so few of them, either for purchase or rental, to be converted into overcrowded properties to service a need that's entirely inappropriate to their design and construction, especially when couples and families are having to leave the city to secure suitable accommodation. Secondly, I would just ask the Planning Committee to consider the moral hazard we may create by approving the application in this instance when there has been evidence on the part of the developer to undermine the integrity of the planning process. In April last year, well, I saw it certainly the year before last, a planning application was submitted to an HMO. That was when withdrawn. And then April last year, another application was committed to extend it to a 5-bedroom home from 2 bedrooms, which we talked about. Before that work was even complete, a new application has been submitted for an HMO. The application states there are no other HMOs in the area, that we've already proven there is one. And finally, there's a revelation that the developer used financial inducements to procure positive comments on the application from tenants to other properties. I think we need to consider the message we'll be sending to other developers in the city. If they do not like the planning rules we've implemented, they are free to attempt to subvert them with seemingly no repercussions. For these reasons, I sincerely implore the committee to take on board the well-founded opinions and concerns of local residents and send a clear message that affordable family homes in the city were protected from rapacious overdevelopment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you want to take your seat back? Oh, does anyone have any questions? Sorry. Okay, thank you. And we also have the applicants, is that right? John Wright and Helen Wright. Good afternoon. So yeah, the button's on the front right for your microphone, and then you have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
We are a small family business that develops and manages various housing throughout the city. We are from the city, based in the city, and employ in the city. We create both new build housing and redevelop existing housing. The property in question had sat on the market for several months and had not been sold due to the very poor condition it was in. The roof had been leaking for many years, causing extensive damage to the superstructure as the mortar in the wall was failing and the brickwork was crumbling. We invested £220,000 to rebuild the property to make it safe and converting it into a 5-bedroom property. I honestly believe this would have been a project too far for a family home. It would have not been viable for the building to be converted into a family home as the cost to complete would be more than what the house would be worth at the end of the project. Our company's motto, stroke ethos, is to provide housing that we would want our children to live in. We strive with every development to up the game and go one step further in better design and product. This house is aimed at young professionals. Demand for these rooms are very high. We feel that young people starting out in life should have a choice of a good, safe, high quality accommodation, and we should try to fulfill that space. This house has been completed to the very highest spec and finish. We have gone above and beyond building control planning recommendations, providing higher insulation, net gain in ecological terms, self-proofing party walls, bird deterrence as a seagull issue in the area. Your officer report has clearly outlined that we've met every criteria laid out in the city plan. I don't invest money in projects if we don't make sure that we've done our very best on projects and met every criteria as we know them inside out. Whilst I acknowledge the objections, none state any planning violation has occurred. Many just are wrong, untrue, or just conjecture. Unfortunately, people often have misconceptions of HMOs and their inhabitants. They are sometimes unfairly demonised, causing unfounded fear to neighbourhoods. This is wrong. The house is providing a much needed accommodation to people who are entitled to it in a location deprived of the type. We encourage the committee to approve and support the housing needs of the entire community we live in and not just a certain demographic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Stephen? Mr. Wright, sorry. No? Thank you. Can you... Everybody ready to move to debate? Thank you. Who would like to start? Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I agree with the residents' comment about the lack of affordable family homes in the city, and yes, that is a problem, and we know the effect that has on the number of children in our schools, there's also another demographic, one of them sitting in this very room. These are young professionals who need nice, comfortable, safe accommodation. And, you know, it's the same as it's ever been. I think the whole HMO thing, it conjures up these views in people's minds of, you know, that bunch of students and the young ones all out in the garden playing football and making a noise. But it's, you know, they're young professionals. Often there are young professionals live in these properties, like our very own TJ, who are too busy working and just getting their heads down and getting on with their lives. So I'll be minded to support him.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shanks.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Robinson. I think increasingly people are looking to sort of replicate the student house, but in a more upmarket place, which this seems to be. You know, they're all going to have a bathroom with their own and all that stuff. So I think it's quite a nice development. I mean, I think, well, the proofs are in the, when it actually happens, I suppose, for residents. But I would have thought they're, perfectly able to live alongside them.
Thank you. Councillor Sheard.
Well, as I've been referenced, I feel like I've got to say something now. So, as Councillor Robinson beautifully alluded to, I do currently live in an HMO. So this is the basis of my thinking. I think in relation to one of the rooms, it wasn't that long ago that a certain height-gifted councillor was complaining about the height of a certain roof. But in contradiction to that planning permission, I think there are, due to the greater number of bedrooms in the property, that this alleviates that problem, and there won't be an expectation for someone who is heighted above 1.5 metres, like myself, to be expected to try and make use of a room with lacking headspace. In relation to HMOs, I think others have said it quite well. There's this kind of picture you conjure in your head that is being used by people who necessarily come with antisocial behaviour or necessarily come with a free-flowing lifestyle, or are operating within shady realms. When in the reality, a lot of people in HMOs are young people, because, as was laid out so beautifully earlier, housing is so expensive. The average price of a family home, 540 grand. This house was picked up for 243,000, and that was deemed as affordable. That's 6.5 times the average wage of the country. That's 8 times the average wage of Brighton, and that's what we deem as affordable. What on earth is the rate of the average house in comparison to that? How are we expecting any young person to ever get on the property ladder, have their own house, if that is the level they're coming in at? And I've said it before in planning, there are people 40, like one of the people I live with earns over 50 grand a year, and he can't afford to get their own house, their own property in the city, because it's so expensive, so they have to live in HMOs. It's a byproduct of the housing crisis that this is so desperately needed, because we are struggling to get enough housing up to meet rising demand, not just here, but across the whole of the southeast of England. So I think I understand wanting more family homes, but we're losing one family home to house we're losing one 4-bedroom family home to house 5 individuals who otherwise would be stuck living at home or on the streets. And I'd much rather take that approach than trying to protect family homes at the moment. So I am very much likely to vote for this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Earthy.
Yeah, difficult to follow that, really. I just I completely agree, by the way. It sounds like that this this house hasn't been removed from the market. It sounded like it was derelict to start with. Did I understand that right from the developer? That yeah. Yeah, so the point is, anyway, to me, it doesn't, to be brutally honest, doesn't sound like we have lost it. We've actually gained 5 places, HMOs. It sounds like, unless this gentleman had intervened, it probably still would be on the market falling apart. It would probably fallen to the ground and be completely useless. So, agree with Councillor Sheard, and yes, I'm afraid I will vote it through. Thank you.
Councillor Theobald.
Yeah, there's a lot of objections, 43 objections to this. I would prefer it to be a family home, and it's a shame it can't be sold as that if they can't get the money for it. The applicant seems to have spent a lot of money getting it in good condition. So hopefully there'll be some good tenants in this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'm inclined to agree with many of the comments. The much maligned HMO doesn't always necessarily have to be a bunch of reprobates, and as we all know from our councillor colleague here. So I'm minded to approve. Should we go to the vote? All those in favour? Thank you.
To confirm, Chair, that is a unanimous agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming and for your contribution. Thank you. We'll move on to item D, which is Flat 2, Princess Mansions. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. It doesn't have to be F, sorry, because it's speakers. I do beg your pardon. Item F, BH 2024/02834, 9 Princess Square. And we have Stephen Dover, who is going to be the presenting officer.
Good afternoon, Chair, councillors.
Thank you very much. And this is a presentation in respect of 9 Princes Square. So it's BH 2024-02834. And the application is for erection of single-storey rear extension with roof lights to replace the existing rear extension and bay window, roof replacement and alterations to include hip roof and rear dormer extensions, construction and basement. There's revised fenestration, alterations to the boundary wall, including enlargement of the vehicular access point, landscaping alterations, and some associated works. So map the application site, location plan, aerial photo, and then 3D photos, give you a bit more context. And then this is taken from Princes Square facing directly onto it. And note, when you look at the roof here, you can see that you've got the side dormer just on the right-hand side of the roof. And then you've got the flat roof extension with the oriel window. So that's on the right-hand side, the bay window that's sort of floating. That's the oriel window. So that's the area that the roof would extend across, which you'll see in the later plans. Then front photos to both sides. You can see the dormer, side dormer in context, and the existing flat roof, which will be disappearing as part of the application. Then rear photo. So to the to the left-hand side is the south, that's number 7, and then to the right is number 11 to the north. So number 7 on the left-hand side, and then number 11 on the right-hand side photo. Existing plot plan, and then the proposed. So you can see there's an L-shaped extension coming to the rear, which is extending out to circa 8 metres on the northern side, and then 3 metres on the southern side. And there is an infill part which will have an extending roof coming across it. So front and rear elevations at the moment, and side elevations. And then this is the proposed front and rear elevations. So you can see here that on the front, the existing flat roof on the right-hand side of the roof disappears, the oriel window disappears, which I pointed out earlier. And the hitch roof then extends all the way across. And then to the rear, you can see they're putting in a new dormer window. And then below that, you'll see that the bay window exists, but that's effectively a replacement of the bay window that's there at the moment. So that will be rebuilt and then reinstated. And then you've got the ground floor extension on the ground floor. See here in the side elevations. And then that's existing street scene, just give you a bit of context. And then proposed. And then site section. And here you can see that there's also a basement area which the applicant is proposing. And then another view of the rear. This is the floor plan. Ground floor plan. So here you can see the L-shaped extension coming off. So predominantly to the northern side, and then set back 1 metre from the boundary on the northern side, and then on the southern side, extending out for a further 3 metres or so. And then they've got a roof terrace, a terraced area there, which has a roof coming across it, which is extendable. First floor plan. So that's the replaced bay at first floor window. And then second floor plan with the master bedroom and then dormer out to the rear. Proposed roof plan, and you can see there's some solar panels as well, which are on the southern side, dormer, and then the roof light to the new master bedroom. And you can see the flat roof area of the existing garage and first floor disappears. Representations for the original scheme. So the original scheme had a larger rear dormer, and also all of the bay window at the rear was to be removed. And then I'll come on to the revised scheme, which you've seen in the presentation, but the revised scheme had a lower number of representations. So for the original scheme, where the whole of the bay window would be taken away at the rear, and there was a larger rear dormer, there was 15 representations objecting, and they were predominantly on harm to the character of the building, the conservation area. Basement would cause instability, construction work would be noisy and dusty, and the works would cause amenity harm, so overdevelopment, overshadowing, overlooking, noise, overlooking. And then 8 representations were received supporting the application for good design, sensitive to the neighbours with no amenity harm, respects existing heritage assets, and similar schemes have been approved and built with no objections in the area. Then the revised scheme, so this is where the first floor bay was to be replaced.
and the dormer size was reduced significantly. 8 representations received objecting to the application for design was still harmful, dormer was still too big, basement will still cause instability, and ground steam venting. The works would harm the historic character of the building and the conservation area, poor design. So the key considerations for the application are the heritage impacts, the design and the amenity impacts. And this is all detailed in the report, but the conclusions we came to in the planning balance are there's no harm to the setting and surrounding heritage assets. Dormer would be to the rear and not highly visible in the wider public realm. Overall, there's an improvement to the appearance of the host property in the wider public realm, so the front elevation, due to the replacement of the flat roof and the contrasting window styles currently, so with the oriel windows and then the casement windows. Would increase the amount of residential floor space and flexibility of the existing house. And then there's no significant amenity harm should occur from the development. The ground floor extension is set back from both neighbours, single story, and the dormer, it would introduce new and higher views, but it's not considered harmful as the area is already surveyed at first floor level and higher. So it's not going to be introducing completely new views. And the recommendation was to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for clarification for the presenting officer? No? Okay, let me call the resident, Polly Tudor Williams. No?
I'm just going to check and she may have got just in the bathroom.
Okay.
Just check that. Chair, would you mind?
No, go ahead. Good afternoon, Polly. So you have a button on the right-hand side at the bottom of your microphone, and as soon as you start speaking, the clock will start running, and you have 3 minutes. So whenever you're ready.
Hello, thank you for your time. I'm the home owner of 11 Princess Square, a property paired with number 9. Regarding the demolition construction environment management plan, I'm politely asking for this project because dust poses a serious health risk to our son, who has chronic lung disease. He spent the start of his life on a ventilator and home oxygen, and during COVID, he was classed as high risk and stayed indoors. Even small amounts of dust can have major consequences for him. I find myself in disagreement with the Transport Officer's assessment that no DCEMP would be appropriate. This isn't just about the scale of the project, it's about protecting our family's health. We've lived in our house for 16 years and simply want to feel safe in our home during the applicant's construction. This request is health related, so should not be exclusively made by a Transport Officer who has no understanding of our situation. I also have bilateral non-syndromic hearing loss that causes loud noises to sound louder, and this could be overwhelming and distressing when prolonged. The impact the construction will have on us is considerable. I'm asking for your support in making sure a DCEMP is in place. It would give us a small but essential layer of protection. Thank you. I now turn to the heat source pump and ground floor extension configuration. The heat source pump could go anywhere. It can function anywhere. Its current position is inconsiderate. The distance between the applicant's property boundary and ours is less than 1 metre. The distance between the applicant's house and the wide driveway on the house to the south, number 7, is over 5 metres. The actual house tripled that distance. It would have been more neighbourly, considerate and a better design to situate the heat pump to that side. Had there been any consultation or communication with us during the design process and prior to the application being submitted, this could have been very easily designed out. I would request that the air source heat pump is relocated to the southern elevation rather on the northern elevation, where it will sit bang adjacent to our kitchen terrace, and the noise, vibration and emissions would interrupt our quiet enjoyment of our home. Given that relocating it will have no material impact to the construction, this change would be a very welcome concession to us as the closest neighbour. I also note it is proposed a condition that the window overlooking the wide 5-metre driveway be obscured, but that the window to the north looking into our property is not, and I would ask that this window is also obscured to protect our amenity and privacy. Have I still got the time, Scott? There have been many objections to the basement plans in terms of setting an unwanted precedent, but also to the removal of the bay window. And the planning officer is clearly stating the loss of the original full-height bay is regrettable. If it's regrettable and against conservation directives, why approve it? Approving its demolition makes a mockery of the robust conservation rules you have in place. It should not be about what a property looks like as you drive by in your car. You shouldn't be allowed to adhere at the front or smuggle in what you like at the back. Heritage states that bay windows must always be retained. If they must be retained, then retain them and look to come up with a different ground floor extension plan. Or if you don't like bay windows...
Thank you. I'm afraid you're
it's good.
out of time. Excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the resident? There's also an applicant. No questions for the resident. Do we have Corinne Morton? Oh, we see. So we've got two of you and you're going to share the time. Okay, excellent. So if you press the button on the bottom right and once you start talking and then just hand over after a minute and a half and then we'll tell you when your time's up. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So obviously speaking on behalf of Steph as well. She doesn't particularly like public speaking. It's my wife. We're originally from the South Coast. We kind of got two children. We fell in love really with Princess Square, the local school, local area, and we were very, very lucky to have found a plot there. When we got there, there was a very damning survey, roof rot, damp, structural issues littered across the property. So rather than kind of shy away from that, we kind of embraced it. You know, we actually want to bring life back to an old building that was essentially derelict and not being used. We are, I essentially engaged with local planning, heritage, obviously our wonderful architect, Corinne here, to put together a really sensitive plan that on one side considered all the local planning applications and enhances the conservation area. And on the other side, actually doesn't overstep. We're not flash people. We're here to build a house for our family for years and years to come and be part of the community. And Corinne's going to talk to you a bit about that.
Thanks. So 9 Princess Square is not listed, but was likely originally built as a pair with number 11 to the north. But both properties have since undergone significant alterations, as Stephen has pointed out, and they're both now kind of quite unbalanced with mismatched roof forms, PVC windows, and first floor additions on the front facade. Both properties are also well screened and the rear elevations have been concealed from public view, with only the first floor and the roof being visible from very small number of private views from the upper floors of the neighbouring buildings. The ground floor is all but entirely concealed by tall boundary fences and foliage. Working obviously on behalf of the clients and in tandem with a heritage consultant, we've developed a set of proposals that are entirely supported by the council's planning and heritage teams. At roof level, we do propose a small dormer, which is a rear dormer, which is positioned within the slope of the roof, entirely in keeping with the guidance set out in SPD 12 and similar in scale to those found at number 4, number 8, as well as 2 doors down at number 5, Princess Square. At first floor, the existing bay window will be demolished and rebuilt, but now with timber windows in place of the current UPVC. The proposed ground floor extension, as Stephen mentioned, is partly full width and L shape, but with the terrace located on the opposite boundary, away from number 11, to protect their amenity and minimise impact on neighbours. And in all instances, the proposed ground floor extension is compliant with SPD 12, the council's guidance document on extensions. The proposed basement sits entirely beneath the footprint of the house and will have no planning impact on neighbouring houses, street scene or the conservation area. Proposals to alter the external appearance of the building see the replacement of existing failing render, the replacement extension of the roof, and also the replacement of the UPVC windows with timber. And so we would gratefully ask that the committee consider the application, approve it.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Murphy.
Hi. Yeah, just query what one of the other residents said about the location of this heat pump being on the north side rather than Can you confirm what the dimensions are, the width where it's sitting? Because I always understood that a heat pump needs at least 1 metre of clear space around it, which doesn't include its own width. So if you've got a heat pump that's in something that's 1 metre wide, it's not going to work. So can you confirm what the dimensions are? Thanks.
Yeah, so your broad understanding of it is generally correct insofar as it needs 1 metre in front of the heat pump. It also requires a bit of space to the side and to the rear to circulate air. The position that it's been located in is within a kind of a storage cupboard on the north side, so it's recessed within a cupboard set back from the boundary, so 1 metre from the other boundary. It's also located at ground floor level, so any kind of acoustic enclosure which is in will obviously muffle the sound, as well as you having the flank wall of the neighbouring property as well.
Councillor Shanks.
I think my question is probably to the officer, which is about this thing that they mentioned, the demolition control thing. Is that something we can do, or is that coming to building control works?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. It's not something that we'd normally apply for an application this size. It's not demolishing the building. It's not a new build. We're not creating any new dwellings here. Even if we were demolishing and doing a new build, we probably wouldn't do it unless there's a substantial amount of development taking place. And here it's a householder application, it's extension. So obviously there will be controls that will have to be put in place, and they're going to be done by the contractors to make sure they minimise it. And I would hope that the applicant would liaise with the next door neighbours to ensure that that's minimised as far as possible. It wouldn't be proportionate or appropriate for us to impose that type of condition, which is quite severe and quite rigorous for a development of this type.
Councillor Fairmont. Your neighbours talked about the heat pump being moved to the other side. Would you possibly do that? Is there more room? The other question I was going to ask about the obscure window that the lady talked about. I don't know which window that is. And would there be any hours of work if you started this project?
So just to confirm, the southern flank wall of the house is the boundary. So to locate a heat pump on that flank of the wall would be trespassing onto the neighbour. So that can't be done. I think you mentioned about the window. The only window that's on the north side was a small kind of slot window within the kitchen, which is the ground floor extension. So it's not a material overlooking issue because you're simply looking at the boundary wall. I think you mentioned hours of working as well. I think that would be as part of a standard planning condition, perhaps, but not to do with the.
As we do actually put hours of work. I don't know what's reasonable. Is that something that we might look at, the hours of work?
Normally, we don't impose hours of work conditions in respect of planning applications. I'm sure it has been on some, but it's not something that I've done on any of the applications that I've been involved in. And normally, it would be controlled now by environmental health, the hours of conditioning the hours of work. So if there was any unreasonable hours that would be taking place on site by the contractors, that would be something environmental health would control.
Do we have any other questions? Councillor Robinson.
Going back to this air source heat pump then, I'm a little bit confused because the way your neighbour was talking was as if there was space on the other side. So I can't understand why she would be proposing something for an area where there isn't actually any space to put it. Could it go somewhere different to where it is now, which seems as if it's going to cause some distress to the neighbour?
I suppose you could mount it on the flat roof, but it would cause greater acoustic issues because it would be broadcasting it. Likewise, on a pitched roof, I guess it would be unsightly in a conservation area, and again would broadcast the noise. But located at ground floor in an acoustic enclosure, then immediately in front of a boundary wall, I think is probably the best location for acoustic attenuation.
Sorry, would it help if I just showed the plan again so everybody can see where it is? Yeah. Sorry, you can see just up here on the top of the plan. So this is the boundary with the neighbour here. So this is number 11. So the lady was talking earlier. And then this is the corridor or pathway to the side of number 9. So that's about 1 metre wide. And then here this extension, and then the air source heat pump just here in the storage area. And then it has sliding doors running across the front. So it's obviously it's set back from the boundary by over 1 metre anyway. It then has sliding doors running across it for the store, and then you've got the boundary fence on this side as well. So from my perspective as a planning officer and us as the LPA, we would say that that's a satisfactory location for it because it's visibly, it's not highly visible, it's relatively contained, it's set back behind the sliding doors, it's 1 metre from the boundary, and then it's behind the boundary fence as well. So the impacts of it. So from our perspective, it would be acceptable, and it was likely it would meet all the, if it was applied for on the micro certificate regeneration scheme, it would also meet all the criteria there, because what they look at there is where it's placed in relation to the sensitive receptors, and it judges the sensitive receptors normally as the windows of the neighbouring properties. So it's likely, obviously I haven't made that calculation myself because I'm not qualified to do it, but from other ones we've seen in relation to that certificate scheme, it would likely meet those criteria. But of course, that doesn't stop it being located elsewhere, but on balance, we think this is suitable.
Just want to ask a question about, sorry,
No, I was just going to say it's closer to the applicants themselves. So it's in their interest to make sure it's as quiet as possible. They've got a bedroom window just above it. They've got their kitchen just behind it. So, you know, it's in their interest to make sure it operates quietly.
I'm sorry, we're not allowed to take any comments. Sorry, but everyone had a chance to ask questions, but unfortunately they didn't. So I just wanted to ask a question about the bay window. I know these buildings aren't listed. When you the client the applicant was saying that they're going to replace the bay window with wood. Is that quite a common thing now to kind of go back to wood? I don't know. I always thought that. I live in a 1930s house, and I'd say in my neighbourhood, not lots of people are going towards aluminium and things like that. Anyway, off you go.
Yeah, so the applicants are quite keen, obviously, to keep things in line with the conservation area. Obviously, the windows in the area originally were timber. From an environmental point of view, we find now that kind of U values, which measure the heat loss, energy loss through a window, the most efficient that you can actually get are timber frame casements, as opposed to mixture of aluminium or wood. They're closer to it, but actually thermally efficiently and most sustainably is timber. So that was part of the reason why we were looking to kind of reinstate it in that way. Currently it's UPVC and looks terrible. So.
I agree.
To keep the whole thing kind of uniform as well, because obviously at the front we have a bay window, at the back we have a bay window, so we want to keep that sort of uniform feel. Yeah.
Then I have another question, which is about basements, because I've done my time in London, and then I've read about all these people who fall out, neighbours fall out over the basement building. Tell me, please, how this resolves itself.
Yeah, well, I can't comment on how people fall out or don't fall out in respect of it, but in respect to the basement development itself proposed here, well, it's not visible in the public realm. It has no impact on the conservation area. I can understand that some of the neighbours have concerns about the basement being dug, but it's not as though they're going to be doing something that's outside the realm of construction and possibility that has never been done elsewhere. This is a relatively common thing. Basements being done, maybe not in Brighton, but certainly across the country. So they would need to find a contractor who is capable of doing this in a way which is going to have no impact on the host property, because I understand they're concerned about subsidence and issues with neighbouring properties, but ultimately they're going to be building it under their own property. So I would say that they're going to be making sure that it has to be done in a way that is going to have no effect on them and hence no effect on the neighbours as well. By building regulations, and there would be an agreement between the applicant themselves and the neighbours with party wall surveyors about the impact of the development itself, and there would be agreements within that party wall agreement about what would happen in the case that there were any issues caused to the neighbours' properties. And what would normally happen in party wall agreements is that if there are any issues, well, the applicant would be liable for any costs resolved or inherent in resolving any issues that are caused by the development that the applicant would undertake. Does that help?
It does help, thank you. Yes, it's a difficult one because, we want everyone to respect our neighbours and get on with them. So it would be really great if you can come to a happy agreement. Are there any more questions, or should we move to debate? Who would like to start the debate? Who would like to start the debate? Oh, Councillor Shipp.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to quickly because we heard from one of the commenters earlier about the serious medical condition of the neighbour. And I understand, I don't want to put in a big cumbersome condition on the resident for the demolition and construction phase that they're going to go through. But at the same time, I don't want to sit here and pass something that's going to put an immediate neighbour at serious risk, especially as it sounds like they are really suffering from this lung condition. So I was wondering what options are available to us to if there's a middle ground we can reach without having to go through the rigmarole of developing an entire plan.
In planning terms, obviously it's hideous to hear, but we have to just take a quite blanket, objective approach and be proportionate, and we can't take into account the medical conditions of neighbours, and whether neighbours are more sensitive than perhaps they might be, because we quite often get objections saying that having any construction next door will ruin my life or whatever. I'm not saying that's happening here, but I'm just saying this isn't something that we can take into account in planning. We have to take quite an objective approach, and whether it's proportionate to require them to submit a construction environmental management plan, which it wouldn't be, we consider in this case. It's not proportionate for a one dwelling, just extensions to a dwelling. Thank you.
Not say, oh, sorry, I just wanted to say this because I don't think it's proportionate, I don't think it's unproportionate if development actually puts someone else's life at risk by the development. I'm not saying, I know you have to take an objective view, but if there is an objective fact here that there is a risk to life, surely that has to be considered. I know it's probably not within our purview that much, but surely we need to factor that into our decision making.
No, that's again, it's straying beyond the planning process. We do have to be, it's the developer can obviously take measures proportionate to protect their neighbour if they wish it, but we do have to be very clear that the planning process, requires us to consider the impact on neighbours, and in this case, carrying out extensions, it's not considered proportionate to. I can't quite comprehend what measures you could put in place that would be reasonable to ensure that no dust strays beyond the boundary, if you know what I mean. It'd be disproportionate for a small development like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's an improvement to the street scene there. I'm happy to support it. Councillor Robertson.
If we're on debate now, yes, I think it will be improvement. I think the current building looks pretty, looks in need of some TLC. So I think it will be an improvement.
Councillor Shear?
Sorry, I feel like I was being too negative about it. I am in support of the development. I just wanted to explore that one point, but I do think this is an improvement, and I think it looks quite nice. And yeah, I'll shut up before I get told off for talking too badly about heritage areas.
I mean, I'm inclined to agree. I wish neighbours could talk to each other and find a solution. I don't know how. I mean, unfortunately, your neighbour has just left. But if you are able to help some, you know, because she's going to be your neighbour, and you know, I mean, it's very difficult for us because we're all sort of, because we're sitting on the fence. Obviously, we're not literally sitting on the fence, but you know, we're trying to adjudicate between you know, two lots of people who aren't in agreement, and it would be great if you could try and find some way to agree. But I will be in favour of this. Sorry, Councillor Earthy. Sorry, Councillor Earthy, off you go. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to repeat what you said, really. Yes, I'm in favour of the development, but I would call upon the developers to be extremely considerate to this case and do whatever you can, because you don't really want the harm of a child on your conscience. So please be as sensitive as you possibly can. So the plea, really.
Councillor Theobald?
I was going to say the same sort of thing, really, because I do feel sorry for the lady after what she said, and her son and herself. It is difficult, and I hope that the developers will bear this in mind and, you know, perhaps be friendly and talk to them and, you know, see if some arrangement can be made that will make it easier, you know, for them. Well, okay.
Are we ready to go to a vote? All those in favour?
Chair, that's a unanimous agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now going to. Not that one. Can we go back to the previous?
Chair.
Thank you. So we will now go to the final item of the day, item D. Oh, sorry, is it not? Is it not? Okay. Oh, really? I wrote them down.
Yeah.
Yes, it's okay. Absolutely right. Yeah.
No, it's these.
It's D.
So could we do your name next?
Yep. And then
If we jump into Square, this is Princess Mansion.
Yep.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. So item D. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Item D, flat 2, Princess Mansion, 31 Sussex Square, BH 2024/03121. I think somebody called. Who wants to retract her call? Did you retract her call? Did you retract her call? If you want to retract it.
Okay, just to be clear, then items D, which is BH 2024/03121, flat 2, Princess Mansions, and E, the listed building consent, the members you're not calling, is that correct? Thank you. So then moving on to the very last item on the agenda, then item K, BH 2025/00268, 6B College Place. Do members wish to discuss that? Am I correct that you don't want to discuss that one? So do we want to discuss item K then? It's up to you.
Yeah, the reduced scale.
Yeah.
So am I correct that you're not calling item K? Is that correct? That nobody wants to talk about item K. So that means then, Chair, that we have talked for all the items. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask for next time that we think about these things when we call everything at the start of what is predictably a very long afternoon? We are all good. Thank you so much for this is the end of the meeting. I now formally announce the closure. You can all go home. Bye bye.